The drilling rig had been running for over 14 hours straight, gnashing through asteroid rock as easily as a hot knife through butter. At this depth, there shouldn't have been anything unusual, a steady hum of machines, the occasional chatter of bored miners, but the readings had gone off the charts. The anomaly appeared out of nowhere. Captain Lars Donovan, the mission commander of the East Dauntless, stood with his arms crossed in the cramped control room, staring at the display with furrowed brows. He wasn't a scientist, not by a long shot. His job was to keep the mining operation smooth and secure. But when something as strange as this popped up, it became his problem too. "Run that again," he said, his voice low and gruff. He pointed at the swirling data on the screen. "Tell me I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing." Dr. Kamil Basia, the lead astrophysicist on board, scratched his head, equally perplexed. "You're seeing it. No way around it, Captain. The drill hit something, but it's not rock. Well, we don't know what it is. The readings make no sense." Lars leaned in closer. On the screen, a jagged pulse of energy flickered in and out of focus like a mirage. It wasn't just energy. The very laws of physics seemed to be fluctuating around the anomaly. Gravitational fields went haywire, light bent in impossible ways, and time signatures fluctuated as if they were being rewritten. "What's causing it?" Lars asked, knowing the answer wouldn't be satisfying. Kamil exhaled deeply. "That's the thing, sir. It's not natural. Or at least, it doesn't follow any natural phenomenon we've ever encountered. It's like reality is glitching." Lars turned sharply to Kamil. "Glitching. That's not exactly a scientific term." "No, it's not," Kamil admitted. "But the models show localized breaks in reality. Whatever this is, it shouldn't exist, not by our understanding. It's as if space itself is unraveling and reweaving right in front of us." Lars clenched his fists. The mining operation was supposed to be straightforward: strip a dead asteroid for its mineral wealth and head back to Earth. Instead, they were now sitting on top of something that could potentially rewrite their understanding of the universe, and that meant risks, big ones. "Shut down the drill," Lars ordered. A technician, seated nearby, swiveled around in his chair, wide-eyed. "Sir, we're 2 weeks behind schedule. We can't." "Shut it down," Lars repeated, steel in his voice. The technician quickly complied, and the rhythmic hum of the drill faded away. Kamil looked over at him. "You're not thinking of abandoning the anomaly, are you?" Lars raised an eyebrow. "No, but I need to know it's not going to kill us all first." They stood in silence for a moment, the faint thrum of the ship's systems the only sound. Lars could feel the weight of command pressing down on him. He had 50 crew members to think about, and none of them signed up for reality-warping phenomena. "We'll send a probe in," Kamil said, breaking the tension. "See if we can get more data without putting anyone in danger." "Good idea. Do it." As Kamil moved to prepare the probe, Lars stepped away from the control room and into the adjacent corridor. He needed a moment to process this. His boots clanked against the metal floor as he walked, the low hum of the ship's systems grounding him in the present. Reality glitching. He had seen strange things before: radiation bursts, gravity wells that twisted light into bizarre shapes, but this felt different. This felt like they were poking at something they had no business touching. Back in the control room, Kamil and his team launched the probe, a sleek, cylindrical device that hummed quietly as it drifted toward the anomaly. Lars watched through the viewport as it approached the distorted patch of space, a thin tendril of energy licking out toward it like lightning. "Probe entering anomaly field," Kamil reported. For a moment, the probe floated in the strange zone, its lights flickering as the onboard sensors worked overtime to collect data. Then, without warning, the probe disappeared, vanished, as if it had never existed. The room fell silent. Lars felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. "Where the hell did it go?" he demanded. Kamil's fingers danced over the controls, but his expression was one of shock. I'm not sure. It's just gone." Lars leaned over his shoulder, staring at the empty space where the probe had been. pull up the telemetry. There's got to be something. Camel did as instructed, but the data was incomprehensible. This is impossible. It's as if the probe was pulled out of our dimension entirely. Lars stood up straight, his instincts kicking in. We're not alone out here, are we? Camel turned to him, eyes wide. What do you mean? I mean, if this is something we don't understand, there's a good chance someone or something out there does. 3 days later, the signal came. Lars sat at his desk in his quarters, the lights dimmed, when the emergency alert blared through the ship. He rushed to the bridge, where Camel and the rest of the senior staff were already gathered. The main screen displayed a single repeating message broadcast on an unknown frequency. The voice, translated through the ship's AI, was cold, mechanical. Attention, Earth vessel. You have accessed a restricted anomaly. Cease all operations immediately. Further tampering with the anomaly will result in consequences beyond your comprehension. Lars exchanged a glance with Camel. Who the hell is that? Camel looked pale. It's not human, that's for sure. Before Lars could respond, the message repeated, this time with a second layer of distortion. The voice was different, deeper, more aggressive. You have been warned. Lars felt a knot form in his stomach. He had a sinking feeling that they had just kicked the hornet's nest. Any idea who's sending that? Lars asked, turning to his communications officer. No, sir, the officer replied. But whatever it is, it's broadcasting from multiple locations at once. It's like they're surrounding us. Lars' jaw tightened. They weren't just miners anymore. They had uncovered something far bigger than they ever imagined. And now, it seemed the entire galaxy knew it. We need to figure out what we're dealing with, Lars said, his voice grim. And fast. Camel spoke up, his voice quiet. I think we already know. Everyone turned to face him. Camel's eyes were fixed on the anomaly, still pulsing faintly in the distance. This, he said, pointing at the screen, isn't just a glitch. It's a loophole in reality itself. And I think it's a loophole others have tried to control before. Lars stared at the pulsing energy field, realizing in that moment the scale of what they'd stumbled upon. This wasn't just an anomaly, it was a gateway. And now the entire galaxy was watching. Captain Lars Donovan stood at the command console, his fingers tapping a slow, deliberate rhythm on the metallic surface. He had learned to stay calm under pressure, but this situation was different. The warning from the alien voice echoed in his mind, each repetition driving home the urgency and magnitude of the situation. His team waited silently around him, scientists, engineers, military personnel, all with the same mix of fear and anticipation etched on their faces. The asteroid mining mission had quickly become an interstellar incident, and whatever was out there, it knew they had tapped into something dangerous. Lars turned to Camel, the scientist who had first uncovered the anomaly. Do you have any idea how much time we have before they show up in person? Camel shook his head, staring at the endless void on the main screen. It's hard to say. If they're broadcasting from multiple locations like the comms officer said, they could be days away, or minutes. Lars cursed under his breath. They needed to figure out what they were dealing with, fast. Any update on the anomaly's behavior since the probe vanished? Lars asked. Camel's assistant, Dr. Ellis, spoke up from a nearby station. The anomaly remains stable. No further fluctuations, but the energy signatures are unlike anything we've encountered. It's not just an anomaly. It's something. Active. Lars nodded slowly. Active how? Ellis hesitated. It's as if the anomaly is responding to us. Whatever we do, it adapts. And based on the probe's disappearance, it might even be sentient. Lars mulled over that for a moment, his thoughts racing. A sentient tier in reality. The idea was absurd, but after years of space exploration, he had learned that absurd was the new normal. Okay, Lars said, taking control of the situation. We need to understand what we're dealing with before any more ships arrive. Camel, Ellis, get me all the data you can. We're going to analyze this thing from every angle. I want possibilities, no matter how far-fetched. Camel nodded and motioned for Ellis to begin working with him. Lars turned to Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, the tactical officer, and his most reliable military mind. Hayes, how are we looking on defense? Lars asked. Hayes was a hulking figure of a man, scarred from more than a few close encounters in his time. His military demeanor was sharp, but Lars trusted him with his life. We've got the weapon systems prepped, but against alien tech, it's hard to say if they'll be effective. These aren't pirates, Captain. If they can manipulate reality, our conventional weapons might be useless. Lars frowned, but knew Hayes was right. Still, the crew needed to know they had some means of defense. We'll deal with that when the time comes. For now, I want every possible angle covered. If they get hostile, we need to buy time. Hayes gave a curt nod. Understood. I'll keep the team on high alert. As Hayes left to check the ship's defensive systems, Lars remained at the console, his mind running through scenarios. They were alone in deep space, far from Earth, surrounded by something beyond human comprehension. And now, they had a galactic audience watching their every move. Hours later, Camel rushed back to the bridge, his face flushed with excitement and fear. He slammed a tablet down on the console, pulling up a series of calculations and diagrams on the ship's main display. I think we've found something, he announced, slightly breathless. Lars stepped forward, leaning over the screen. Go on. Camel pointed to the graphs. We've been looking at this all wrong. The anomaly, it's not just some random tier in space-time. It's a loophole, a controlled tier, and it's leaking energy, potentially infinite energy. Lars' eyes narrowed. Controlled by who? Camel's expression turned grave. That's the question. Whoever or whatever created this anomaly designed it to manipulate the very fabric of reality. We're dealing with forces far beyond anything we've seen before, and I think that's what triggered the alien warnings. Lars processed this information in silence. If what Camel said was true, this was bigger than a mere scientific discovery. Whoever controlled the loophole controlled reality itself. That explained the alien broadcast the warning, the fear in their voices. They were scared of what humanity might do with this power. Can we use it? Lars asked cautiously. Camel hesitated. In theory, yes, but it's dangerous. This isn't like harnessing nuclear energy. We're talking about altering the laws of the universe. One wrong move could destabilize everything. And what if we don't use it? Lars pressed. What if we just leave it alone? Camel shook his head. They won't let us. Whoever's out there, they know we found it. If we don't use it, someone else will, and I don't think they'll be as cautious as we are. Lars paced the bridge, tension building in his chest. This was the ultimate weapon, and it had fallen into their laps. But it wasn't just about power, it was about survival. The aliens wouldn't stop until they either had the loophole for themselves or humanity was wiped off the map. We need to find a way to control it, Lars said finally. But we do it our way, carefully, methodically. We don't start playing God until we know exactly what we're dealing with. Camel nodded, already thinking through the possibilities. Agreed. I'll start running simulations. We need to understand how the anomaly interacts with matter and energy before we try anything. Lars clenched his jaw. Do it. Just as Camel and his team began their work, an alert blared across the ship, an incoming vessel. Lars snapped to attention. What now? The main screen flickered to life, showing a distant silhouette, a massive alien ship, unlike anything they had encountered before. Its design was sleek, almost organic, with shifting colors that made it seem alive. It dwarfed the Dauntless, casting a long shadow over the asteroid where the humans had been mining. It's them, Hayes said grimly, standing at the tactical station. They've come. The alien vessel loomed closer, still not firing or making any aggressive moves. But Lars knew better than to assume they were safe. Open a channel, Lars ordered. Let's see what they want. The comms officer nodded, and moments later, the same mechanical voice that had warned them before echoed through the bridge. Earth vessel, you were warned. Cease your actions immediately or face the consequences. Lars stepped forward, glaring at the screen. We're not interested in a fight, but you're not going to threaten us into submission either. Who are you, and what do you want with the anomaly? A moment of silence followed before the voice responded, this time with a more menacing tone. You misunderstand, human. We do not wish to fight either. But the anomaly is a force that must not be tampered with. If you continue to exploit it, you risk unraveling the very fabric of existence. Camel leaned in, his brow furrowed. Wait. They're afraid of it. They're afraid of what we might do. Lars turned back to the comms. What exactly are you afraid of? The voice hesitated, as if weighing its next words carefully. The anomaly is not what you believe it to be. It is a door to other realities. If you open it too wide, you may let something through, something that cannot be controlled. The tension in the room spiked as the crew processed the gravity of the alien's warning. Lars felt a chill creep up his spine. What are you talking about? What's on the other side? Lars demanded. The voice did not answer. Instead, the connection cut off, leaving only static in its place. Hayes cursed under his breath. What the hell does that mean? A door to other realities? Are they serious? Lars' mind raced. He had suspected that the anomaly was more than just a glitch, but a doorway to other dimensions. If the aliens were telling the truth, this wasn't just about controlling reality, it was about keeping something far worse from crossing over. He turned to Camel, his expression deadly serious. We need answers. Fast. If that thing's a door, we need to know what's on the other side before it opens any wider. Camel nodded, already pulling up data on his tablet. We'll run a full scan of the anomaly. If it really is a gateway, we should be able to detect any disturbances on the other side. Lars took a deep breath. They were in uncharted territory now. The galaxy was watching them, waiting for them to make a move. One wrong step could tear reality apart. Let's hope we're not too late, Lars muttered. The alien ship hovered ominously on the main screen, its surface rippling with strange energy. No further communication came, but the tension inside the Ist Dauntless was palpable. Captain Lars Donovan stood at the center of it all, feeling the weight of his decisions like never before. What had started as a routine mining operation had spiraled into something that could threaten not just the mission, but all of humanity. How close are we to a full analysis of the anomaly? Lars asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Camel, seated at his workstation, was surrounded by a cascade of holographic data. His fingers moved quickly, pulling up complex readings, graphs, and energy signatures. We're close. The anomaly's structure it's difficult to describe, Captain. It's not just a tier in space, it's like a junction. Different realities converge here. That alien was right. It's a doorway, but it's not fully open yet. And how do we make sure it stays closed? Lars asked. Camel didn't answer right away. He exchanged a look with his assistant, Dr. Ellis, who was just as deep in the data. Ellis spoke up, her voice filled with uncertainty. That's the problem. It's not designed to stay closed. It's an artificial construct, built to bridge realities. Whoever made it, whether it was the aliens or something else, they meant for it to be used. Lars clenched his fists, pacing in front of the console. This was getting worse by the second. Not only were they dealing with an alien presence that outclassed them in every conceivable way, but now they were sitting on a bomb that could tear the universe apart. Options, he barked. I need options. Camel took a deep breath. We could try to destabilize it. Push energy into the anomaly and cause it to collapse. But that's risky. If we overdo it, we could tear a hole in space-time even bigger than the one we're trying to close. Lars rubbed his temple. What's the alternative? We could seal it, Camel said. Use the ship's quantum field generators to reinforce the fabric of space around the anomaly. Basically, we'd put a lock on the door. but it won't hold forever. How long? Lars asked. Maybe a few days, maybe a few years. It depends on how much energy we can divert and how stable the anomaly is. Lars considered his options. Neither was good. If they destabilized the anomaly and failed, it could wipe them all out in an instant. If they sealed it, they were just delaying the inevitable, and the aliens might not be willing to wait that long. He turned to Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, who had been quietly monitoring the alien vessel's movements. "What's the status of our friend out there?" Hayes crossed his arms, his face set in a grim expression. "They haven't moved an inch. No weapons active, but they're just sitting there, like they're waiting for something." Lars' instincts told him the alien ship wasn't just waiting. They were watching, calculating. Maybe they didn't know how to deal with the anomaly either, and that's why they hadn't made a move. "Keep a close eye on them," Lars said. "If they so much as twitch, I want to know about it." "Yes, sir." Lars turned back to Camel. "Prepare to seal the anomaly. I don't like it, but it's the only play we've got right now." Camel nodded and immediately began issuing orders to the engineering team. They would need to reroute power from non-essential systems to the quantum field generators, a process that would take time they might not have if the aliens decided to intervene. As the crew scrambled to execute his orders, Lars couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of options. Every step they took felt like it was leading them deeper into a trap they couldn't see. "Captain," Hayes called out suddenly, his tone urgent. Lars rushed over to the tactical station. "What is it?" Hayes pointed at the screen. "The alien ship. It's moving." Lars' heart sank. The massive vessel had begun a slow but deliberate approach toward the asteroid and the anomaly. It wasn't firing, but its intent was clear. It was coming for them. "How much time until they're in range?" Lars asked. "At this speed, 10 minutes, maybe less." "Are they powering up any weapons?" Lars asked, dread pooling in his gut. "Not yet, but they don't need to," Hayes replied grimly. "They're big enough to ram us into the asteroid if they want." "Well, we're not letting that happen," Lars muttered. He hit the comm button on his console. "All hands, prepare for possible impact. Defensive systems on full alert." The ship hummed as shields powered up, and the crew braced for what felt like an inevitable confrontation. Lars glanced at the main screen, the alien ship growing larger with each passing second. "Any progress on sealing that anomaly?" Lars called over his shoulder to Camel. "Almost there," Camel said, his voice tight with concentration. "We're rerouting the last of the power now. We just need a little more time." "Time we don't have," Lars muttered under his breath. Suddenly, the ship jolted violently, alarms blaring across the bridge. Lars grabbed the edge of his console to steady himself. "Status report," he shouted. "That wasn't an impact, Captain," Hayes called out, his eyes glued to the tactical display. "It's the anomaly, it's fluctuating." Lars turned to the main screen, his heart pounding. The anomaly, once a swirling mass of controlled energy, was now pulsating erratically. It was as if something inside was trying to push through, and the alien ship's approach was agitating it. "Captain," Camel shouted, "the anomaly's destabilizing. We're losing control of the containment field." Lars rushed over to Camel's station. "What the hell happened?" "It's reacting to the alien ship," Camel said, his face pale. "The closer they get, the more unstable the anomaly becomes. If they keep pushing, it's going to blow." "How long do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less." Lars felt a cold sweat break out across his skin. They were out of time, and their options had just run out. "Hayes, open a channel to the alien ship," Lars ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Lars stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "This is Captain Lars Donovan of the Dauntless. You need to stop your approach immediately. The anomaly is destabilizing, and if you don't back off, it's going to destroy us all." There was a tense pause before the alien voice responded. "Human, you cannot control what you do not understand. This is your final warning. Leave the anomaly, or we will be forced to take action. Lars' anger flared. Listen to me. This isn't about controlling it anymore. If you keep pushing, the anomaly is going to tear a hole in reality. You want to risk that? Another pause, longer this time. We will deal with the consequences. You have no place in this matter. Lars cursed under his breath. The aliens weren't bluffing. They were willing to sacrifice everything to get control of the anomaly, even if it meant tearing the fabric of reality apart in the process. Captain, Camel shouted, pulling Lars' attention back to the anomaly. It's about to breach. Lars made his decision in an instant. Fire at the alien ship. Hayes hesitated. Captain, they'll wipe us out if we... Do it, Lars barked. The Dauntless's weapons roared to life, streaks of plasma and railgun fire slamming into the alien vessel's shields. The alien ship didn't fire back, but its approach slowed as it redirected energy to absorb the barrage. Keep firing, Lars ordered. But before Hayes could comply, the alien ship retaliated. A pulse of energy shot out from the vessel, slamming into the Dauntless with a force that sent the ship spiraling. Systems overloaded, lights flickered, and the sound of tearing metal filled the bridge. Lars was thrown to the ground, his vision blurring as the ship groaned under the assault. Status, he shouted, pulling himself to his feet. Hayes, blood trickling down his forehead, managed to pull up a display. Shields are down. We're sitting ducks, Captain. Lars' heart raced. They couldn't take another hit like that. Camel, can you stabilize the anomaly? I'm trying, but it's too late, Camel said, his voice filled with panic. It's going to blow. Lars looked at the screen, the alien ship looming closer, and the anomaly pulsing wildly. They were out of options, out of time. But then something changed. The anomaly stopped fluctuating. For a brief, terrifying moment, it was still, and then, in the blink of an eye, it expanded, swallowing the space around it, including the alien ship. The Dauntless lurched, caught in the gravitational pull of the expanding rift. Alarms blared as the crew struggled to maintain control. Captain, Camel shouted, we're being pulled in. Lars braced himself against his console, staring into the swirling abyss of the anomaly. They were caught between two impossible choices: fight the pull and risk tearing the ship apart, or let the anomaly take them and hope they survived whatever lay on the other side. All power to the engines, Lars ordered. Get us out of here. The engines roared to life, straining against the overwhelming force of the anomaly's gravity, but it was too strong. Bit by bit, the ship was dragged closer to the event horizon. And then, in a flash of blinding light, everything went dark. The void was infinite, cold, and utterly silent. Lars Donovan blinked, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Or rather, what he wasn't seeing. One moment, the Dauntless had been pulled into the anomaly, and now, nothing. His hands, the bridge, the ship, all of it was gone. Yet, he was still there, conscious, a floating thought in a sea of oblivion. Am I dead? The question drifted in his mind, unanswered, as if the universe had no obligation to respond. Then, a flicker of light appeared in the distance. Just a faint glimmer, barely noticeable, but enough to give Lars something to focus on. It grew steadily brighter, until it overwhelmed him, forcing him to shut his eyes against the burning intensity. When he opened them again, the world had returned. The Dauntless's bridge snapped back into place around him, the hum of systems whirring in his ears, the lights flickering overhead. The air felt thick, heavy, as though the entire ship was submerged under an invisible weight. Lars stood frozen for a moment, his heart pounding, trying to shake off the disorientation. Had they survived? Was this reality, or some twisted version of it? He quickly glanced around at his crew. Camel was slumped in his seat, looking dazed but alive. Hayes was groaning, pulling himself off the floor, clutching his ribs. Report, Lars barked, his voice hoarse. Camel shook his head, blinking rapidly as if to clear his vision. I don't know, Captain. 1 minute we were getting sucked in, the next, this. Are we still in normal space? Lars asked. Hayes stumbled over to his station, wincing in pain as he checked the sensors. No, sir. Sensors are scrambled, but this isn't normal space. It's not anything I recognize. Lars grimaced. Can you get us back? Plot a course? Hayes shook his head. I don't think so. Navigation shot. We're completely off the map, Captain. Lars cursed under his breath. They weren't dead, but they were definitely not safe either. They had no idea where they were or how to get back. The alien ship had vanished too, seemingly swallowed by the anomaly. What about the anomaly? Lars asked, turning to Camel. Is it still active? Camel tapped his console, frowning at the data streaming in. It's there, but different. It's more stable now, but it's still affecting space around us. It's like we're in its shadow. Its gravitational pull is weaker, but we're still caught in it. Can we move? Engines operational? Lars asked, trying to focus on the immediate problems. Camel looked at him, and the worry in his eyes deepened. We have some engine power, but the quantum field generators are fried. We can't stabilize our position in this space. We can drift, but not much else. Lars gritted his teeth. They were trapped in this strange reality, adrift with no clear path back home. But they couldn't sit here waiting for something worse to happen. They had to act. All right, Lars said, taking command of the situation. Let's focus on what we can control. Camel, start running diagnostics on all systems. Prioritize engine and navigation repairs. Hayes, keep scanning for anything other ships, anomalies, anything we can use to figure out where the hell we are. And see if there's any sign of that alien ship. The crew sprang into action, albeit slowly, still shaking off the effects of their ordeal. Lars walked over to one of the viewports, peering out into the strange new space they found themselves in. The stars, or what passed for stars here, were distorted, like warped reflections in a funhouse mirror. They twisted and flickered in ways that made his head spin. This wasn't just a different part of the galaxy, they were in a different reality altogether. But whose? And how long could they survive here? As if in answer, the ship suddenly jolted, the lights dimming briefly before flickering back to life. Captain, Camel called out, his voice filled with alarm. We've got something on sensors. Lars rushed back to the command console. What is it? It's another ship. No, wait, multiple ships. And they're big. A whole fleet. Camel's voice wavered with disbelief as the readings came into clearer focus. Lars stared at the tactical display, a chill running down his spine. Sure enough, several massive vessels were closing in on their position. Their designs were unfamiliar, long, sleek, and almost organic in their construction. They moved with eerie precision, like predators honing in on wounded prey. Are they the same species as the alien ship? Lars asked, hoping for some sign that they might be dealing with a known threat. Camel shook his head. No, different configuration entirely, but their not friendly power signatures suggest they're armed to the teeth. Can we run? Lars asked, though he already suspected the answer. Not with our engines in this condition, Camel replied. We won't make it far. Lars clenched his fists. They were sitting ducks, outgunned and outnumbered. Whoever these newcomers were, they had them dead to rights. Incoming transmission, Hayes said, his voice tense. Put it through, Lars ordered, steeling himself for what came next. The main screen flickered, and an alien figure appeared. It was humanoid, but with features so alien they were hard to process. Its skin was a metallic gray, and its eyes were unsettlingly large, like black voids that drank in the light. When it spoke, its voice was mechanical, processed, as though it was being translated in real time. You have entered forbidden space. Surrender immediately, or face annihilation. Lars' heart raced. Forbidden space. He glanced at Camel, who was busy running the translations. Can we negotiate? Unclear, Camel said. Their language is advanced, but the tone is clear. This is a warning, not an invitation. Warn them about the anomaly, Lars said, his mind racing. They need to know that if they push us, it could destabilize again and wipe us all out. Camel relayed the message, but the response was immediate and cold. You will comply. The anomaly is irrelevant. Surrender or be destroyed. Great, Lars muttered under his breath. The cold efficiency of their reply told him everything he needed to know. These beings didn't care about the risks. They weren't interested in negotiation or reason. They saw the Dauntless as an intruder, and they were prepared to wipe it out without hesitation. Hayes looked up from his station, his expression grim. Captain, they're powering weapons. Lars' mind raced. They couldn't fight these ships head-on, and they couldn't run. But surrender wasn't an option, either, not without dooming the ship and his crew to whatever fate these aliens had in store. Camel, is there any way to use the anomaly? Can we jump back through it? Lars asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Camel shook his head. It's too unstable. Without the quantum field generators, we'd be torn apart. The ship jolted again as the alien fleet drew closer. Lars could feel the weight of every second pressing down on him. They needed an edge, something, anything that could give them a chance. Wait, Camel said suddenly, his eyes widening as he stared at the anomaly readings. There's a spike in the anomaly's energy. It's fluctuating again, like it's trying to stabilize. What does that mean for us? Lars asked. Camel hesitated, then looked up, his face pale but determined. It means we might be able to trigger a collapse, a controlled one. If we overload the anomaly with energy, it could cause a localized rift, like an explosion. It would destroy the anomaly and everything in close proximity. Everything, Lars repeated, including us. Camel nodded. But if we time it right, we might be able to shield ourselves long enough to ride the shockwave and escape. Lars' mind raced. It was a suicidal plan, but it was better than waiting to be vaporized by the alien fleet. Do it, Lars said, his voice resolute. Prep the overload. We'll use the anomaly to blow our way out. Camel nodded and began working furiously at his station, rerouting power and setting the ship's systems to overload the anomaly. The alien fleet was closing in fast. On the screen, the lead ship's weapons were fully charged, ready to fire. Time to impact. Hayes? Lars asked, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. 30 seconds, Hayes replied, sweat beading on his forehead. Camel, how long until the overload is ready? 15 seconds, Camel shouted, his hands flying across the controls. Lars gripped the edge of his console, watching as the alien fleet moved into attack range. They were out of time. Camel, fire it now, Lars ordered. The Dauntless lurched violently as the energy surged into the anomaly. The screen flared with blinding light, and the alien ships fired just as the anomaly detonated, sending out a massive shockwave that engulfed everything in its path. Lars felt the ship shudder as it was caught in the wave, the force of the explosion rattling every bone in his body. For a moment, there was only chaos, lights flickering, alarms blaring, the ship shaking violently. And then, silence. The Dauntless drifted through the wreckage of the alien fleet, the anomaly gone, leaving behind only a distorted patch of space. They had survived. But for how long? The Dauntless floated in eerie silence amidst the wreckage of the alien fleet. Debris from the massive ships drifted aimlessly, a twisted field of broken metal and glowing embers where advanced warships had once been. The shockwave from the anomaly's collapse had done its job, obliterating everything caught within the blast radius. Lars Donovan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. They were still alive, but only just. The ship groaned in protest from the damage it had sustained, and the power flickered weakly across the bridge. But it held together, and for now, that was enough. Damage report, Lars said, his voice raspy from the strain. Camel, slumped in his chair, glanced at the console in front of him. His fingers moved sluggishly over the controls, eyes scanning the data. Shields are almost gone. We've taken heavy damage to the hull, engines are at minimal power, and we've lost life support in the lower decks. But we're stable for the moment. Lars nodded, though the weight of their survival bore down on him. They'd escaped the anomaly, but they were stranded in an unknown region of space, surrounded by wreckage, and barely hanging on. His crew was bruised, battered, and exhausted, and there was no telling how much longer the Dauntless could stay operational. "Any sign of the alien ship? The one that led us into this mess?" Lars asked. Camel's brow furrowed. "No readings. It's either gone or destroyed." Lars wasn't so sure. That ship had been too advanced, its technology too strange to simply vanish without a trace. If it had survived the collapse of the anomaly, it was out there, watching, waiting. "What about the anomaly?" Lars pressed. "Is it completely gone?" Camel hesitated, checking the sensors. "Yes, Captain. There's no sign of it. The explosion destabilized whatever was holding it together, and now it's just gone. Gone." The anomaly that had pulled them into this bizarre stretch of reality had vanished, leaving them in a place that wasn't on any chart or map. Lars took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. "How's the crew holding up?" Lars asked, turning to Hayes. Hayes, still nursing his bruised ribs, looked up from his station. "We've got injuries, but nothing critical. Everyone's in rough shape, but we're still functional." "Good," Lars muttered. "That's something, at least." He stepped toward the viewport, gazing out at the field of debris. It wasn't just the alien ships that had been destroyed. Bits of warped, unrecognizable material floated among the wreckage fragments of something older, more alien. He had a gnawing feeling in his gut that they'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. "We need to figure out where we are," Lars said, turning back to the bridge. "Hayes, keep scanning for any signs of life or communication. Anything that can tell us where we've ended up." Hayes nodded and got to work, though Lars could see the tension in his movements. They were lost, and everyone knew it. Camel's console beeped, drawing his attention. His face went pale as he looked at the data streaming in. "Captain, you're going to want to see this." Lars rushed over, staring at the readout on Camel's screen. His heart skipped a beat. It was a faint signal, barely detectable, but it was there. An energy signature, different from anything they'd encountered before, an artificial structure of some kind, hidden behind the massive debris field. "What the hell is that?" Lars asked, leaning closer to the screen. "It's old," Camel said, his voice low. "Really old. But the power readings, they're still active. There's something alive down there." "Could it be a distress beacon? Maybe a ship's emergency signal?" Lars asked. Camel shook his head. "No, this isn't a ship. It's something else. A structure. And it's massive." Lars frowned. The wreckage was concealing whatever was generating the signal, but from the readings, it was clear that this was no ordinary installation. The power signature was unlike anything they'd seen before. Alien, yes, but ancient. "Hayes, can you clear up the signal?" Lars asked. Hayes worked at his console, enhancing the feed. Slowly, a clearer picture began to form. A massive, sprawling structure, partially buried within the debris. It looked almost like a temple, a gigantic complex of interlocking metal spires and chambers, floating in the void like a relic from a forgotten era. "That's not just a ship," Hayes muttered, eyes wide. "It's a city." "A city in space?" Lars asked, incredulous. Camel nodded. "It looks like it, or at least what's left of one, and it's still functioning at some level." Lars' mind raced. A city-sized structure, hidden in a dead zone of space, still powered and operational after who knew how long. Whatever it was, it might hold the answers to the anomaly, to the aliens, to everything. And, perhaps most importantly, it might be their ticket home. "Can we get closer?" Lars asked, though he already suspected the answer. "With the engines in their current state?" Camel shook his head. "We can drift toward it, but we're not making any fast moves." Lars chewed his lip. They didn't have much choice. They were low on resources, stranded in a hostile region of space, and their only lead was this mysterious city-like structure. "All right," Lars said, coming to a decision. Plot a course. We'll get as close as we can and see what we're dealing with. Maybe there's something there that can help us." The crew set to work, aligning the Dauntless with the energy signature. It was slow going without full engine power. They were barely inching forward. But they were moving, and that was enough. As they drifted closer, the structure came into clearer view, its towering spires jutting out at impossible angles, the surface marked by deep scars and battle damage. It had seen conflict, but it had endured. Lars watched the ancient city draw nearer, a sense of unease creeping over him. There was something about it, something that felt wrong, as though it wasn't meant to be found. "We're close enough for a shuttle," Camel said, breaking Lars from his thoughts. "If we want to investigate, we'll need to go in on foot." Lars nodded, though the prospect of entering that ancient structure sent a shiver down his spine. Still, they had no choice. Whatever was inside might be their only hope. "Prep a shuttle," Lars ordered. "I'll lead an away team. Hayes, you're with me. Camel, keep the ship running and monitor our vitals. If anything goes wrong, get us out of there." Camel raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do we get out of there with no engines?" "Figure it out," Lars said with a thin smile, though there was no humor behind it. "Just don't let us get stranded down there." With that, Lars turned and headed for the shuttle bay. The air was thick with tension as the small team suited up, the weight of the unknown pressing down on each of them. Hayes looked particularly nervous, his hands shaking as he checked his equipment. "You okay?" Lars asked, placing a hand on his shoulder. Hayes nodded, though it was clear he was anything but just not a fan of ancient, possibly haunted space cities. "Me neither," Lars said with a chuckle, though the humor didn't quite reach his eyes. "But we don't have much choice." Once the shuttle was ready, they launched into the void, the Dauntless shrinking behind them as they approached the sprawling alien structure. Up close, it was even more intimidating, vast, towering, and utterly silent. The surface was scarred and weathered, with strange symbols etched into the metal, symbols that seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy. Lars felt a knot tighten in his stomach as they docked with one of the few intact entry points. This place was old, ancient beyond anything they had encountered before, and yet it was still alive, still holding on to some flicker of power. As they stepped out of the shuttle and into the structure's dark, echoing corridors, Lars couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Whatever this place was, it had secrets, and some secrets were better left buried. But it was too late to turn back now. Lars took the lead as they moved deeper into the alien structure. The corridors stretched out like a maze, twisting and turning, with walls that seemed to shift and shimmer under the light of their helmets. Strange symbols lined the walls, pulsating faintly, as though alive with some forgotten energy. Hayes followed closely, his rifle raised but his hands still trembling. His eyes darted around nervously, scanning the dimly lit passages for any signs of danger. He wasn't alone in his apprehension. Lars could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on all of them. Even though the air was stale and unmoving, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, lurking just out of sight. "Stay sharp," Lars muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. The sound seemed to carry far too easily in the oppressive silence of the structure. The place felt like a tomb, a relic from a time long forgotten. And yet, it was still alive in some strange, unsettling way. They reached a large chamber, its walls adorned with more of the strange symbols, but this time they were different, more intricate, more chaotic. The room was dominated by a massive central console, a smooth, black platform that pulsed with a faint blue light. It was the only thing in the room that seemed remotely operational. Lars gestured for Hayes to follow as he approached the console. The platform hummed softly under his touch, and a series of alien symbols flickered to life on its surface, cycling through patterns he couldn't begin to understand. "Looks like this is the control hub for the entire structure," Hayes said, his voice shaky. He reached out cautiously to examine the console. "It's definitely powered, but I can't make heads or tails of this interface." Lars frowned. He wasn't surprised. It was clear that this place wasn't built by any species they knew of. Its architecture and technology were so far removed from anything in the galactic database that it might as well have been from another universe. Can you get anything from it? Location data? Maybe a way to contact someone. Anyone? Lars asked. Hayes worked for a moment, fingers flying over the controls as best he could, but the interface didn't respond to any known commands. It was as if the system had its own logic, its own rules, and they were utterly alien. I'm not getting much, Hayes admitted, but there's definitely a lot of power still running through this place. I think there are deeper levels, possibly a central core or data repository. Lars nodded, his mind racing. If they could access the structure's central systems, they might be able to find anything that could give them answers. He was certain now that this place held the key to their situation. The anomaly, the alien fleet, the impossible technology, it all led back here. But something was gnawing at him, a deeper fear that had been lurking since they'd arrived. This place wasn't just ancient, it was forbidden. He couldn't shake the sense that it had been sealed off for a reason, that they weren't meant to be here. We go deeper, Lars said, making the decision. Hayes, mark the route back to the shuttle. We'll need to move fast if this place starts reacting to us. As they descended into the lower levels, the atmosphere changed. The structure became more chaotic, corridors twisting in impossible ways, ceilings rising and falling without reason. The deeper they went, the more the technology seemed to blur with the organic, as though the walls themselves were alive, shifting and pulsing with an unseen rhythm. They reached what appeared to be the central core of the structure. The chamber was vast, its ceiling stretching impossibly high, and at its center stood a monolithic device, towering and ominous. Strange tendrils of energy arced between the device and the walls, casting an eerie glow across the room. The air was thick with tension, every breath labored as though the very space around them resisted their presence. Hayes approached the monolith carefully, scanning it with his handheld device. This is it, Captain. This thing. It's the heart of the entire structure. I've never seen anything like it. Lars moved closer, eyes narrowing as he studied the strange machine. It was unlike any technology he had ever seen. The surface was smooth and dark, with tendrils of energy flowing across it in complex patterns. It felt alive, like the entire structure was somehow connected to this central core. Can you access it? Lars asked, though he already knew the answer. Hayes shook his head. No. Whatever this is, it's beyond us. This isn't just old technology, it's something else. It's as if the structure itself is alive. Lars felt a chill crawl down his spine. Alive? Hayes nodded slowly. I don't know how to explain it, but the energy patterns are too complex for a machine. It's like this thing is thinking, reacting to us. Lars clenched his jaw. He didn't like where this was going. The idea of a sentient structure, one that had been lying dormant for God knows how long, wasn't something he was eager to mess with. Before he could say anything more, a sudden pulse of energy shot through the chamber. The walls around them flickered, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. The symbols on the walls flared to life, glowing with a bright, almost blinding intensity. What the hell? Hayes shouted, stepping back in alarm. Lars spun around, weapon at the ready, but there was no enemy to face. Just the structure, reacting to their presence. The monolith in the center of the room began to hum, a low, vibrating sound that echoed through the chamber. It was awakening. We need to get out of here, Lars said, his voice urgent. Now. But before they could move, the room erupted into chaos. The walls began to shift, metal groaning as the structure reconfigured itself. Doorways slammed shut, sealing them inside. The floor beneath them rippled, and the strange symbols seemed to crawl across the surfaces, like living creatures. We're trapped, Hayes yelled, frantically searching for an escape. Lars scanned the room, his mind racing. He hadn't come this far to die in some ancient tomb. There had to be a way out, something they hadn't seen yet. Hayes, look for any weak points in the structure, Lars ordered. If we can blast our way out, we're doing it. Hayes scrambled to work, his handheld scanner beeping as it searched for vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Lars focused on the monolith. The energy patterns flowing through it had intensified, and he could feel a strange pull emanating from it, like it was trying to communicate with them. Or worse, trying to assimilate them. The tendrils of energy stretched out from the monolith, snaking toward them, moving like living things. Lars raised his weapon and fired at one of the tendrils, but the shot was absorbed by the energy field surrounding it. The tendrils continued their advance, inching closer with every passing second. "Captain, this thing is trying to interface with us," Hayes shouted. "I don't know what it wants, but we need to shut it down before it." Before Hayes could finish, the tendrils of energy latched onto him, wrapping around his body in a web of glowing light. He screamed as the energy surged through him, his body convulsing under the strain. Lars rushed forward, firing at the tendrils, but nothing seemed to stop them. "Hayes!" Lars yelled, his voice filled with desperation. But it was too late. The energy engulfed Hayes, pulling him toward the monolith. His screams echoed through the chamber, then abruptly cut off as his body was absorbed into the core. Lars froze, horror gripping him. Hayes was gone, taken by whatever this thing was, and now the tendrils were turning toward him, ready to claim their next victim. His heart pounded in his chest as he backed away, frantically searching for a way out. But the walls had sealed shut, and the room was alive with energy, trapping him in this nightmare. The monolith pulsed again, and Lars felt a surge of something an alien presence invading his mind. It wasn't just the structure that was alive. It was aware. It had been waiting for them, and now it had them. Lars' vision blurred as the alien consciousness pressed deeper into his thoughts. He could feel its hunger, its need to consume, to assimilate everything it touched. This was no ancient ruin. It was a predator, lying in wait for millennia. And now it had him in its grasp. The alien consciousness surged through Lars's mind like a raging storm. It was chaotic, a cacophony of thoughts and sensations that clawed at the edges of his sanity. He felt himself being drawn into its depths, an overwhelming sense of inevitability washing over him. This wasn't just a machine, it was a living entity, hungry for more than just energy. It craved knowledge, experience, and most terrifying of all, control. "Fight it, Lars," he heard Hayes' voice echo in his mind, a fragmented remnant of his fallen comrade. The connection was weak, almost drowned out by the alien presence, but it sparked something in Lars, a flicker of resolve. He struggled against the invasive thoughts, pushing back with every ounce of willpower he had left. Memories surged within him, his childhood, laughter shared with friends, the thrill of exploration, the promise of humanity's potential. These were his, and he would not let this entity take them. "Get out of my head," he roared, his voice reverberating in the chamber. It was a desperate declaration that seemed to momentarily disrupt the alien's hold. The tendrils recoiled slightly, and Lars seized the opportunity. He lunged for the monolith, determination flooding his veins. If he could disrupt its core, maybe he could break its grip on him and whatever was left of Hayes. He reached for the central console, fingers dancing over the strange symbols, trying to find a command, any command that would give him a chance. The symbols shifted under his touch, flickering and warping. A sequence sparked in his mind, an instinctive understanding born of pure desperation. He pressed down on a series of glyphs, feeling the energy in the room intensify, swirling around him like a tempest. Suddenly, a violent surge erupted from the core, and the chamber shook violently. The energy that had held him captive flared, and for a brief moment Lars was free. The oppressive presence retreated, and he gasped for breath, feeling the weight of the room begin to shift again. In that moment of clarity, Lars turned and sprinted toward the exit. The walls throbbed with energy, the alien structure screaming in protest. He felt the tendrils lash out again, but he dodged and weaved, adrenaline fueling his flight. Every step resonated with a sense of urgency. He had to escape, not just for himself, but for humanity. "Lars," Hayes' voice rang through his thoughts again, this time clearer, more urgent. "You can do it. Don't give up." With renewed determination, Lars burst into the hallway, glancing back as the core pulsated violently behind him. The monolith was reacting, energy arcing in all directions, as though it sensed its prey escaping. The walls twisted and contorted, and he could hear the low hum of the structure intensifying. He skidded around a corner, his heart pounding in his chest. The ship's layout was now a surreal labyrinth, and with every turn he had to fight the urge to panic. But somewhere in the chaos, he could still feel Hayes's presence, a guiding force urging him on. Lars sprinted through the corridors, the energy from the core building a resonance that shook the very foundation of the structure. He could hear the walls creaking, and the sensation of being hunted crept back in. The alien consciousness was relentless. It wanted him back. But he was not ready to surrender. Reaching a junction, Lars hesitated, trying to remember the way back to the shuttle. In the dim light, he caught sight of a door on his right a chance. Without thinking, he pushed through, entering a smaller chamber that glimmered with strange artifacts and remnants of what once was. The walls were lined with screens displaying fragmented data, images of stars, celestial maps, and something more, countless species, each marked with symbols he did not recognize. It was an archive, a history of the universe that had fallen into the hands of this predatory entity. He approached one of the screens, heart racing. Perhaps he could find something that could help him, something to weaponize against the monstrosity they had stumbled upon. He began tapping at the controls, hoping to access the archives. The screens flickered to life, displaying strange alien writing that he struggled to comprehend. Then he sought a familiar symbol, one he had encountered before, a marker denoting the anomaly they had traced to this very structure. A warning flashed across the screen. "Beware the loop. The past is a weapon." The words sent a chill down his spine. The entity had been here, manipulating time, bending reality to its will. It was a parasite of sorts, feeding off the timelines of countless civilizations, leaving destruction in its wake. He could see images of civilizations rising and falling, each thread snipped away by the monolith's insatiable hunger. "Lars," Hayes's voice broke through again, this time filled with urgency. "You need to go, it's coming." The screens began to flicker erratically as the chamber resonated with the core's frantic energy. The room was coming apart, walls shifting and twisting as though the very fabric of reality was being torn. The monolith had sent out a beacon, calling its tendrils to converge on his position. "Enough of this," Lars shouted, determination surging through him once more. He couldn't let the entity consume him or the knowledge of humanity's existence. He had to fight back, even if it meant using its own power against it. With a fierce resolve, he focused on the console and activated a series of commands he had only half understood. The archive surged with energy, and for a moment he felt the connection between the monolith and the archive. It was as if he had linked himself to the very heart of the structure. The screens flashed, displaying a multitude of timelines, realities diverging and converging. He could see the paths humanity could take: victory, defeat, growth, and annihilation. Each possibility was a thread, and he realized he could manipulate them. "Lars, what are you doing?" Hayes's voice broke through the chaos, a mix of fear and disbelief. "I'm going to end this," Lars shouted back, steeling himself. He focused on the timeline where humanity stood victorious, rallying against the alien threat. He would reach into the fabric of time, sever the connection the entity had with humanity, and force it back into the darkness. He concentrated, pouring every ounce of willpower he had into the command, feeling the energy surge through him. The structure shuddered violently as the timeline shifted, the weight of reality pressing down like an anvil. The tendrils surged into the chamber, but Lars stood his ground, channeling the energy around him, forming a protective barrier. The room filled with blinding light as the timelines collided, the threads of existence warping and intertwining. The monolith reacted in fury, the energy within it reaching a critical point. It howled in rage, and the walls shook violently as it unleashed a torrent of energy. But Lars pressed on, knowing he was on the edge of something monumental. With one final push, he severed the connection between the alien entity and the timelines it had manipulated for eons. The room erupted in a blinding explosion of light and energy, and Lars felt himself being pulled apart and reformed, as the very fabric of reality contorted around him. As the energy dissipated, he was thrown back against the wall. The structure began to collapse, the tendrils retracting and the walls crumbling. The monolith flickered, its power waning, and with one last pulse, it imploded in a flash of light. Lars stumbled to his feet, disoriented but alive. He glanced around the chamber as it crumbled, debris raining down around him. The air was thick with dust and energy, and he had to escape before the entire structure came down on him. "Lars!" Hayes's voice called from somewhere in the haze. "Hayes!" he shouted back, searching frantically through the chaos. "Where are you?" "Here, I'm here." Hayes emerged from the shadows, disoriented but intact. "We have to move now." Lars didn't hesitate. They raced back through the shifting corridors, the walls collapsing behind them. The air crackled with energy, the structure's heartbeat fading as it fell into disarray. They reached the shuttle bay just in time. Lars slammed the door shut behind them, and as they hurried to the controls, the structure erupted behind them, collapsing in on itself, taking the monstrous entity with it. As the shuttle lifted off, Lars and Hayes stared out at the ruin, the once mighty structure now a mass of debris and energy dissipating into the void. "Did we do it?" Hayes asked, breathless and wide-eyed. Lars nodded, though he could hardly believe it. "I think so. We severed its connection to us. It's gone." But even as he spoke, he felt a lingering unease. They had escaped, but the knowledge they had uncovered the truth of the entity, the timeline still weighed heavy on his mind. It wasn't just a victory, it was a warning. They had touched something far beyond their understanding, something that could one day return. "Let's get back to the fleet," Lars said, determination hardening in his voice. "We need to warn them. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again." As the stars streaked past them, he knew that humanity's journey was far from over. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, but they needed to be vigilant. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but also dangers that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. And he would be ready for whatever came next. As the shuttle sped away from the wreckage of the alien monolith, Lars sat in the pilot's seat, hands clenched around the controls. The stars outside were streaks of light, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the challenges that lay ahead. He glanced at Hayes, who was in the co-pilot's seat, his face pale but determined. "Are you all right?" Lars asked, concern edging his voice. "Yeah, I'm fine," Hayes replied, though his voice betrayed a hint of strain. "Just a bit shaken. That thing, it was unlike anything we've ever encountered." Lars nodded, thoughts racing. The alien consciousness had not just been a machine. It had been a predator, a being that thrived on manipulating the very fabric of reality. They had barely escaped with their lives, and now they had to process the implications of what they had discovered. "What do you think it wanted?" Hayes asked, breaking the silence that enveloped them. "I don't know," Lars admitted, his brow furrowed. "But whatever it was looking for a way to exploit us. It needed our minds, our experiences. That's how it feeds, I think." "Feeding on our timelines," Hayes mused, shaking his head. "That's a terrifying thought. How many civilizations has it consumed?" "We might never know," Lars replied, glancing at the navigation screen. They were nearing the fleet's coordinates, and he could see the faint glow of their ships in the distance. "But we have to warn them. We can't let this happen again." As they entered the fleet's vicinity, Lars activated the comms. "Fleet Command, this is Shuttle Alpha 3. We've returned from the alien structure and have urgent intel to share." The response was swift, the familiar voice of Commander Reyes crackling through the static. "Shuttle Alpha 3, report your status." Lars exchanged a quick glance with Hayes, steeling himself. "We encountered an alien monolith that manipulates reality. It attempted to take control of our minds, feeding off our experiences and knowledge." "Are you saying this entity can control timelines?" Reyes' tone shifted, a mix of skepticism and concern. "Not just control. It can sever connections to past timelines, alter reality itself. We barely escaped, Lars replied, urgency lacing his words. We need to prepare for its return. It could come after us, after all of humanity. There was a brief pause before Reyes responded. Understood. Bring your shuttle in for debriefing. We'll convene the senior staff immediately. As they landed, Lars felt a surge of anxiety. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was a battle against something that manipulated reality, a battle for the very essence of what it meant to be human. They exited the shuttle and made their way through the bustling corridors of the flagship, the familiar hum of technology surrounding them. Officers and crew members moved with purpose, their expressions serious as they absorbed the gravity of the situation. In the conference room, the senior staff awaited them, a mix of concerned expressions and resolute determination. Commander Reyes stood at the head of the table, flanked by tactical officers and scientists who were eager for answers. Lars, Hayes, thank you for your quick return, Reyes said, gesturing for them to take their seats. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Lars took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. We've encountered a being that exists outside our understanding of reality. It's a predator, feeding off the experiences of civilizations. We believe it can manipulate time itself, creating alternate timelines that it can feed off. A scientist named Dr. Chen leaned forward, skepticism etched on her face. That's a bold claim. Can you provide any evidence? What's to say this isn't a fabrication? Lars's frustration bubbled up. We don't have physical evidence, we barely escaped. But the threat is real. We felt it. It's not just a story. Reyes raised a hand, calming the tension in the room. Let's not dismiss their account so quickly. We need to consider all possibilities. What can we do to prepare? Another officer spoke up. We could set up a monitoring system to detect anomalies in our sector. If this entity is capable of altering timelines, we might be able to catch it before it strikes. That's a start, Reyes agreed. But we need more than just monitoring. We need a strategy to counter this threat. If it can manipulate reality, we have to find a way to fight back. Lars exchanged a glance with Hayes, who nodded slightly. I think we need to study the monolith. There might be a way to reverse the effects, to understand its core functions. Dr. Chen interjected. You're suggesting we go back, after what you just experienced? It's dangerous, yes, but if we can learn how it operates, we might be able to find a weakness, Lars replied, his resolve hardening. Reyes leaned back, considering their options. We'll need a specialized team. I want a thorough analysis of everything you encountered, every detail, every symbol. If we can unlock the knowledge it possesses, we may stand a chance. Agreed, Lars replied, adrenaline surging through him. We have to be ready for anything. As the meeting concluded, Lars felt a mixture of excitement and dread. They were on the precipice of something monumental, a chance to confront a reality-warping entity that had eluded countless civilizations. But it also meant stepping into the unknown, into a battle where the rules of existence itself could change in an instant. After the meeting, Hayes approached Lars, a thoughtful expression on his face. You really think we can figure this out? Lars nodded, determination glinting in his eyes. We have to. For humanity. We've already lost too much, and we can't let it take anything else. As they walked through the corridors, planning their next move, Lars felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was not just fighting for survival, he was fighting for the future of humanity and the legacy they would leave behind. They needed to act quickly. With each moment wasted, the threat grew stronger. The universe was vast, and while they had survived this encounter, there was no guarantee they would survive the next. Let's gather a team and start working on a plan, Lars said, determination fueling his steps. We'll show this entity that humanity won't be so easily controlled. As they prepared for their next mission, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to plunge into the depths of a reality that could change everything. But they would face it together, armed with the knowledge that humanity was resilient, creative, and capable of overcoming even the darkest of challenges. And as they stepped into the unknown, he felt a surge of hope. They were not alone. They were humanity, and they would fight back. The atmosphere in the flagship was electric as Lars and Hayes convened with the specialized team they had assembled. The dimly lit room buzzed with anticipation, light by the flickering holograms of the alien monolith and its incomprehensible symbols. They were tasked with deciphering not just an artifact, but a potential weapon in the fight against the looming threat. Lars stood at the front of the table, his voice steady as he addressed the team. What we're dealing with is unlike anything we've ever encountered. The monolith was not merely a structure. It's a conduit for an entity that feeds on our experiences and manipulates reality itself. We need to understand how it operates if we're to devise a plan to counter it. Dr. Chen, now fully on board after the debriefing, tapped a series of holographic screens into existence. I've started analyzing the data we collected. The energy signatures we recorded from the monolith are unlike any known form of power. It's almost organic in nature, suggesting that it's alive, or at least part of a larger living system. A young engineer named Zane, bright-eyed and eager, leaned in closer. So, it's not just technology, it's a symbiotic relationship. That would explain its ability to adapt and manipulate. Exactly, Lars replied, feeling a sense of urgency swell within him. If it's alive, it means we're dealing with something that can think, evolve, and anticipate our moves. We need to find a way to disrupt its processes, to sever its connection to our reality. As discussions flowed, they explored various theories and strategies. Hayes, taking notes, raised a key point. What about creating a feedback loop? If we can tap into its energy signature and redirect it, we might be able to disrupt its control over reality. Lars nodded, encouraged by Hayes' input. That's promising. If we can devise a way to amplify our energy signatures in conjunction with its own, we might be able to create a distraction or even destabilize it. Days passed as the team worked tirelessly, poring over every detail of their findings. They scoured the ship's resources, utilizing advanced AI simulations and predictive algorithms to run scenarios. Each iteration brought them closer to understanding the creature, and they began to formulate a plan to engage the monolith again. However, as they neared completion, an unsettling tension crept into their discussions. They were not just battling a reality-altering entity, they were racing against time. What if it had already moved on, or worse, evolved to seek them out? On the fifth day, while analyzing a particularly perplexing series of energy waves, Lars had a moment of clarity. What if the monolith is attracted to emotional energy? When we were near it, I felt a surge of fear and desperation. It was as if it was feeding off those emotions, understanding us on a deeper level. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she considered his words. That could be the key. If we can simulate a strong emotional response, we might draw it in, making it easier to engage while we execute our plan. That's a dangerous game, Hayes cautioned, furrowing his brow. Playing with emotions can lead to unpredictable outcomes. We need to be prepared for anything. Lars felt the weight of his responsibility deepen. We have to take that risk. This entity is too powerful, too cunning. If it senses fear, it will exploit it. But if we can harness that energy and redirect it, then we stand a chance, Zane finished, enthusiasm bubbling in his voice. They decided to set up a training simulation, creating a controlled environment where they could practice amplifying emotional energy without the risk of real-world repercussions. They devised scenarios that would evoke various feelings: fear, hope, anger, and even joy, using advanced virtual reality systems to immerse themselves in situations designed to elicit powerful emotional responses. As the day of the simulation arrived, Lars felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He understood the gravity of what they were attempting: to lure a reality-warping entity into their trap, using the very emotions that could lead to their downfall. The team donned their VR headsets and stepped into the simulation, the world around them dissolving into a vivid tapestry of scenarios. Lars found himself standing in a dark forest, the air thick with tension. Shadows lurked just beyond the reach of the light, a perfect environment to evoke fear. "Everyone, focus on channeling your emotions," Lars instructed, his voice steady despite the unease creeping in. "Feel it, embrace it. We need the monolith to sense our presence." As the team navigated through the eerie landscape, they each confronted their fears, haunted by memories, faced with phantoms of doubt. Each heartbeat resonated with raw emotion. Lars felt the energy building within him, an amalgamation of anxiety and determination, surging through his veins. Suddenly, the environment shifted. The forest dissolved into a dazzling starfield, the vastness of space stretching before them. In that moment, Lars felt a connection, a thread that linked their emotions to the very fabric of the universe. "Now," he shouted, channeling every ounce of energy he could muster. "Let it out." As they all concentrated their emotions, the starfield flickered, responding to their collective energy. It was as if they had opened a conduit, drawing the attention of something immense. In the blink of an eye, the simulation shattered, leaving them back in the conference room, breathless and exhilarated. "It worked!" Zane exclaimed, his face alight with excitement. "We felt it respond." Lars looked at each of his team members, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. "But it's not enough just to feel it. We need to be ready. It will come. We have to act quickly." Days later, after countless simulations, they felt prepared to confront the monolith again. Armed with their newfound understanding, they set out for the coordinates of the monolith, their hearts pounding in anticipation. As they approached the structure, the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. The shimmering landscape of the monolith flickered, responding to their presence. Lars glanced at Hayes, who wore a determined expression. "Remember, we stick to the plan," Lars reminded them. "We'll draw it in with our emotions, and then we'll execute the feedback loop. Stay focused." The moment they landed, the reality around them shifted. The air hummed with energy, a low, pulsating sound that resonated in their chests. "Here we go," Hayes murmured, taking a deep breath as they exited the shuttle. They stepped towards the monolith, and as they did, the world around them began to distort. Time seemed to stretch, and the landscape morphed, reflecting their deepest fears and hopes. Lars felt the weight of their mission pressing down on him, but he also felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Humanity was resilient. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do so again. As they stood before the monolith, they knew they were not just fighting for their lives, but for the future of their species. The entity was a predator, but they were the apex of creativity and resilience. "Let's show it what we're made of," Lars said, and with that, they took a step into the unknown, ready to confront the darkness that lay ahead. The air was thick with tension as Lars and his team approached the alien monolith, a towering structure that shimmered with an otherworldly energy. It pulsed rhythmically, a heartbeat echoing in the stillness, and as they neared, Lars felt an inexplicable connection to it, an awareness that transcended mere technology. "Are you ready?" he asked, glancing at Hayes and the others, their faces a mixture of resolve and apprehension. Hayes nodded, clenching his fists. "We've trained for this. Let's do it." With a deep breath, Lars focused on the emotions they had harnessed in the simulations: fear, determination, hope. He could feel the collective energy radiating from his team, a living force that pulsed around them. "Now," he shouted, directing their energies toward the monolith. "Feel it. Let it guide you." As they projected their emotions, the monolith responded, its surface shimmering and warping. The air crackled with tension, and the landscape around them began to twist and distort, forming visions of their pasts and futures, a kaleidoscope of memories and possibilities. Lars was momentarily lost in the visuals. He saw his childhood, the moment he first looked up at the stars with wonder. Then, flashes of his training, the laughter of comrades, the losses that had haunted him. Each image resonated within him, a powerful reminder of why he fought. Suddenly, the reality warped violently, and a surge of darkness engulfed them, pulling them into a maelstrom of uncertainty. It was then that he realized the entity had noticed them. had recognized the emotional thread they were weaving. "Steady," he shouted, grounding himself as the world swirled around him. "Stay focused." The entity manifested before them a swirling mass of light and shadow, a primordial presence that seemed to absorb the very essence of their fears. It towered above them, its voice reverberating like thunder, a cacophony of whispers and roars. "Feed me," it beckoned, 1,000 voices intertwining. "Your essence, your experiences, they sustain me." Lars felt the weight of its gaze, a penetrating force that sought to pry open the depths of his mind. "No," he yelled, digging deep into his resolve. "We won't let you take us." Fueled by their collective strength, they intensified their emotional output. Hope surged through Lars, transforming into a bright, blinding light. "We are humanity, we are resilient, and we will not be consumed." The light enveloped them, and the entity recoiled, its form flickering as if it were a mirage in the desert. "You cannot resist me. I am beyond your comprehension." "We're not afraid of you," Hayes shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. The shadows around them pulsed, and the monolith responded, resonating with their combined energy. The structure began to glow, absorbing the light they generated, feeding off their determination rather than their fear. Lars could feel it shift. The entity was losing its grip on them. It was not invincible. They were not merely prey. They were active participants in this battle for existence. "Now, Hayes, execute the feedback loop," Lars commanded, knowing they had only a brief window of opportunity. Hayes tapped furiously at his wrist device, sending a pulse of energy toward the monolith. The feedback loop was initiated, a surge of power reverberating through the air, creating a harmonic resonance that clashed against the entity's form. As the energy coursed through the monolith, the atmosphere crackled with electricity. The entity shrieked, its form twisting and contorting as if it were being torn apart. "Hold the line," Lars urged, feeling the intensity of the moment. They had to maintain the connection, to keep channeling their emotions into the loop. The battlefield of light and shadow swirled violently, and for a moment it felt like they were winning. The entity's hold on reality wavered, but it fought back, lashes of darkness striking at them, seeking to sever their connection. With sheer will, Lars dug deeper, recalling the faces of those he had lost and the lives he fought for. "We are not alone, we are humanity, and we will not be erased." The energy intensified, washing over them like a tidal wave. It engulfed the monolith, weaving through its core, threatening to destabilize it completely. The entity let out a roar, a primal sound of desperation, and the air vibrated with the intensity of their confrontation. "Your will is strong," it admitted, its form flickering as if caught between two realities. "But you cannot comprehend the vastness of existence." "Maybe not," Lars replied, "but we know one thing, we won't stop fighting." In that moment, the feedback loop erupted, a blinding flash of energy that shattered the oppressive darkness. The monolith erupted in brilliant light, and the fabric of reality around them twisted, threatening to tear apart as the entity fought against its own nature. With a final, deafening shriek, the entity imploded, a mass of shadows collapsing in on itself, consumed by the light. The monolith trembled, its structure glowing with the energy of their victory, and slowly began to stabilize. As the chaos subsided, the team found themselves back in the clearing, the monolith standing firm but altered. It radiated a warm glow, a sign of the battle fought and won. "We did it," Hayes breathed, disbelief mingling with relief. Lars looked around, the weight of what they had accomplished settling on his shoulders. "We faced a darkness that sought to consume us, and we came out stronger." They took a moment to gather themselves, the air around them filled with a sense of triumph. They had faced the unknown, a being that manipulated reality, and had emerged victorious. But as Lars gazed at the monolith, he felt a flicker of unease. The battle might be over, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. There were countless other entities in the universe, and their victory today was but a step in a much larger journey. "Let's document everything," Lars instructed, turning to his team. "This knowledge will be crucial. We need to prepare for whatever comes next." As they worked to gather data from the monolith, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had pushed the boundaries of understanding, proving that humanity was capable of confronting the unimaginable. In the days that followed, the team worked tirelessly to analyze their findings, preparing for the next phase of their mission. They were determined to ensure that no one would face the horrors they had encountered alone. As they shared their knowledge with the fleet and the wider universe, Lars felt the ripple of hope spread. They were not just survivors, they were pioneers, charting a course through the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they had discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not just in their technology, but in their spirit, the indomitable will to survive and to thrive, no matter the odds. As the stars twinkled above, Lars looked to the horizon of possibilities that awaited them. They would continue to explore the mysteries of the universe, facing danger and wonder with courage and resilience, united as one. Humanity had discovered a reality loophole, and they would use it not just to survive, but to thrive. The future was theirs to shape, and they would face it together. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere aboard the flagship transformed from a cautious tension to one of exhilarating possibility. The revelations about the monolith had sparked not just a sense of triumph, but a renewed commitment to exploring the cosmos. The victory against the entity had become a beacon of hope for humanity, a testament to their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Lars found himself frequently reflecting on the battle, replaying every moment in his mind. The rush of emotions, the fear of failure, and ultimately, the joy of victory became a part of him. He understood now that the fight against the monolith had not merely been a battle of physical might. It had been a confrontation of wills, a clash between human ingenuity and alien predation. As the ship continued its course through the stars, the team prepared to share their findings with the larger human fleet. Lars was especially keen to emphasize the importance of emotional intelligence and the power of collective human experience in their future endeavors. They had proven that humanity could harness even the most primal emotions to turn the tide in their favor. One morning, Lars stood before a gathered audience of soldiers, scientists, and leaders, ready to present their findings. The room was charged with anticipation, each person eager to learn from their experiences. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady as he faced the crowd, "what we have achieved together is more than just a victory over an alien entity. It is a testament to what humanity can accomplish when we unite in purpose and spirit. The battle we fought against the monolith has shown us that our emotions, fear, hope, anger are not weaknesses but sources of strength." He paused, letting his words sink in. "In that confrontation, we discovered a loophole in reality, a way to push back against a force that sought to manipulate us. But this is only the beginning. There are countless mysteries in the universe, many dangers that lurk in the shadows, waiting for the opportunity to strike. Our mission now is to understand and confront these challenges head-on." Cheers erupted from the crowd, a wave of enthusiasm that fueled Lars' resolve. He could see the spark of determination in their eyes, the same spark he had felt during the battle. "Together, we will document our findings, share our knowledge, and prepare for whatever comes next," Lars continued. "We will not be passive observers in this universe. We will be explorers, pioneers, and guardians. And most importantly, we will stand together as one human race." As he concluded his speech, a sense of camaraderie washed over the room. This was more than a meeting, it was a call to action. They were ready to forge ahead into the unknown, united by the shared experiences that had brought them to this moment. Over the next few weeks, they organized training sessions, research groups, and discussions, encouraging everyone to contribute ideas and innovations. The flagship transformed into a hub of activity, filled with the hum of determination and creativity. Lars often found himself working alongside Dr. Chen's, whose expertise had been invaluable in analyzing the monolith's data. Together, they explored the nuances of emotional energy and its implications for future encounters. One evening, as they labored over holographic displays filled with schematics and energy readings, Lars turned to Dr. Chen. What if we could find a way to amplify our emotional responses even further? If we could fine-tune our collective energies, we might be able to affect larger scales of reality, maybe even reach out to other civilizations. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully, her eyes sparkling with excitement. That's an intriguing idea. If we can harness emotional resonance at a higher level, we could potentially establish communication or even alliances with other species. We need to conduct more experiments. Their collaboration flourished, blending science and emotional intelligence in a way that had never been done before. The results were promising, leading them to explore advanced techniques that could allow humans to project their emotional energies across vast distances. As they delved deeper into their research, the ship received a communication from a nearby fleet. They reported strange disturbances in a neighboring sector, an unusual energy signature reminiscent of the monolith. The crew was on high alert. "This could be another entity," Hayes said, his expression serious as they gathered to discuss their next steps. "Or it could be remnants of the same force we faced before. We need to investigate." Lars felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. This was what they had prepared for, a chance to put their newfound knowledge into action. "Let's mobilize the fleet. We'll approach carefully, maintaining our emotional resonance. If it is another entity, we'll be ready this time." As they set course for the reported disturbances, the anticipation in the air was palpable. Lars gathered the team for a briefing, emphasizing the importance of staying calm and focused. "We may be walking into another confrontation," he warned. "But this time, we have the upper hand. We understand our emotions and how to wield them. Trust in what we've accomplished together." The journey to the coordinates was tense. They navigated through a nebula, swirling clouds of gas and dust that obscured their view, heightening the sense of impending danger. Each crew member was acutely aware of their surroundings, ready for whatever might emerge from the darkness. Finally, they arrived at the designated location. The sensors picked up a swirling energy signature, similar to the monolith, but with distinct differences, more chaotic, less structured. "There it is," Dr. Chen said, her fingers dancing over the controls. "But it's unstable. We need to approach with caution." Lars nodded, his heart racing. "All right, let's send a probe first. We need to gather as much data as possible before we make contact." As they launched the probe, a tension-filled silence enveloped the bridge. Moments later, the feed from the probe came through, revealing a turbulent mass of energy, shimmering and shifting, almost alive. "Whatever it is, it's reacting to our presence," Hayes observed, his eyes glued to the display. "It's like it knows we're here." Before they could strategize their next move, the entity surged toward them, tendrils of energy lashing out like whips. Lars felt the familiar grip of fear clawing at his gut. "Brace for impact," he shouted, adrenaline surging through him. The ship rocked violently as the tendrils struck, the energy crashing against the hull. But this time, they were prepared. Lars gathered the team, channeling their emotional energy toward the entity. "Focus, let it know we're here," he yelled, pouring his feelings of courage and determination into the collective effort. The entity halted, its chaotic energy flickering as it responded to their emotional resonance. It twisted and contorted, seeking to understand the source of this new power. "It's trying to communicate," Dr. Chen said, her voice a mix of awe and caution. "If we can maintain this connection, we might be able to learn what it wants." The entity pulsed, sending waves of energy through the ship, each ripple resonating with their emotions. Lars felt the bond deepen, a connection that transcended fear and doubt. In that moment, he understood. They were not just fighting. They were bridging a gap between worlds. Humanity was no longer isolated in the universe. They were becoming part of something larger, something profound. As the energy waves crashed against them, Lars reached deep within himself, harnessing the hope and determination that had fueled their previous victory. "We are humanity," he declared, his voice booming across the bridge. "We seek understanding and connection." The entity responded, its energy swirling into a vortex, reflecting their emotions back at them: fear, curiosity, wonder. For a fleeting moment, they glimpsed visions of countless civilizations across the cosmos, each one struggling, evolving, seeking their own place in the universe. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the connection intensified, enveloping them in a radiant glow. The tendrils withdrew, and the chaotic energy began to stabilize, coalescing into a singular form, a new monolith, perhaps, or a gateway. Lars felt a surge of triumph wash over him. We did it! We reached it! As the entity settled, a new channel of communication opened. A series of symbols flickered in the air before them, intricately woven patterns that pulsed with meaning. "Let's analyze this," Hayes exclaimed, pulling up the holographic interface. Lars watched as the symbols began to translate, revealing a message, a plea for cooperation, for connection. It was a call for unity, a desire to share knowledge and resources across the vast expanse of space. "Look at this," Dr. Chen pointed at the display. "It's asking us to join them, to form an alliance against a greater darkness lurking beyond the stars." Lars felt his heart race. They were no longer just humans fighting for survival. They were becoming a part of something monumental. "We must respond. We have to send a message back, to show that we accept this alliance." With a swift motion, he signaled for the transmission. As they sent their reply, he felt the weight of history shifting beneath them. They were standing at the precipice of a new era, an era of unity and exploration. As the last symbols flickered out, Lars turned to his team, pride swelling within him. "Today, we've shown that humanity is not just a race to survive. We are a race that seeks understanding. We will explore the cosmos, not as conquerors, but as allies. Together, we will face the challenges ahead." As the crew erupted in cheers, Lars felt a sense of purpose envelop him. They had discovered not just a reality loophole, but a path forward, a chance to forge a future that was bright and full of promise. In the days that followed, they began preparing for the next steps, sending representatives to meet with the newfound allies, establishing communication channels, and planning joint explorations into the unknown. Lars knew this was just the beginning. They would face challenges, uncertainties, and perhaps even dangers unknown. But with their newfound strength and unity, he was confident that they could navigate whatever lay ahead. As he stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the swirling stars, he felt a surge of hope. The universe was vast, filled with mysteries and wonders waiting to be uncovered, and humanity, with its unyielding spirit and boundless curiosity, was finally ready to embrace it all. With a deep breath, he whispered to the cosmos, "Let's see what's out there." And in that moment, surrounded by the brilliance of the stars, Lars understood that they were not alone. They were part of a greater tapestry of existence, a collective journey that would take them to the farthest reaches of the universe and beyond. The adventure had only just begun. The stars shone brightly as the flagship Elysium drifted through the vast emptiness of space, its hull gleaming under the glow of distant suns. Humanity had stepped boldly into the universe, united with their newfound allies, the Zeltherans, Thrixian, and Chirondians. Together, they had forged a fragile coalition, a beacon of hope against the unknown. Lars stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the swirling cosmos. The tranquility of space was a stark contrast to the turbulent emotions he felt within. The alliance was still young, and while there was a shared purpose, underlying tensions simmered just beneath the surface. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Aloria system." Dr. Chen's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood beside him, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "It's an automated transmission, repeating every few minutes. The source appears to be an abandoned planet." Lars turned to face her, curiosity piqued. What do we know about the Aloria system? It was home to an ancient civilization known for its advancements in technology and art. They mysteriously vanished over a millennium ago, leaving only ruins behind, Dr. Chen explained, her fingers dancing over the holographic display, projecting an image of a lush green planet, dotted with the remnants of a once thriving society. "Let's plot a course," Lars commanded, adrenaline coursing through him. "We can't ignore a distress signal, especially one from a civilization that has been silent for so long." As the Elysium adjusted its course, Lars gathered the crew in the briefing room. The air buzzed with anticipation as the diverse team of humans and their alien allies took their seats. "Listen up, everyone," Lars began, pacing the room. "We've received a distress signal from the Eloria system. It appears to be coming from a long-abandoned planet. We don't know what we'll find there, but we need to approach with caution." Hayes, the ship's security chief, leaned forward. "What's our game plan if we encounter anything hostile? We don't know who or what could be lurking there." "We'll maintain our emotional resonance," Lars replied, his voice steady. "If the signal is a warning, we need to keep our wits about us and trust in each other. If it's something else, we'll adapt." The crew nodded, determination shining in their eyes. They had faced the unknown before, and they would do so again. As the Elysium entered the Eloria system, the planet came into view, its surface a vibrant tapestry of colors: emerald forests, azure oceans, and golden fields. But something was amiss. The atmosphere shimmered with an unusual energy, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. "Activating cloaking systems," Lars ordered. They would approach unseen, ensuring that they could gather information before revealing their presence. As they neared the planet, the distress signal became clearer, a haunting melody echoing through the ship's systems. Dr. Chen frowned, adjusting the frequency. "It sounds almost desperate. We need to land and investigate." The Elysium touched down on a grassy plain, surrounded by towering ancient structures that had once been magnificent. Vines clung to the stonework, nature reclaiming what was lost. As they disembarked, the crew felt the weight of history pressing in around them. "Stay alert," Hayes warned, scanning the surroundings. "This place has been abandoned for centuries. There could be traps or hostile entities." Lars nodded, feeling a mix of reverence and anxiety. "Let's split into teams. Dr. Chen and I will follow the signal's origin, while the rest of you scout the area." The group moved cautiously, the air thick with a scent of damp earth and decaying foliage. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, Lars couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Shadows danced among the crumbling walls, and whispers seemed to linger just out of reach. "Over there," Dr. Chen pointed ahead, where an ancient archway loomed. The signal was pulsing stronger, guiding them forward. As they stepped through the archway, they entered a vast chamber, the remnants of an alien council hall. Massive stone tables stood in disarray, and murals adorned the walls, depicting the civilization's rise and fall. At the far end of the hall, a pedestal caught Lars' eye, a crystalline device shimmering with energy. "That must be the source of the signal," he said, moving closer. The device hummed, pulsating in rhythm with the distress call. Dr. Chen approached cautiously. "It looks like a communication array, but what could have caused it to malfunction?" Before Lars could answer, a sudden tremor shook the ground, and the walls reverberated with a deep, resonant sound. The room darkened as shadows coalesced into shapes, figures materializing from the very stone. "Get back!" Lars shouted, instinctively reaching for his sidearm. The shadows solidified into humanoid forms, their features obscured by darkness. They moved with an unsettling grace, eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Who dares disturb our slumber?" a voice echoed, resonant and powerful, reverberating through the chamber. Lars felt a chill run down his spine. "We're here to help. We received a distress signal." The shadowy figures exchanged glances, their eyes flickering with curiosity. "Help? You are not the first to seek us, but you may be the last." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice steady. "What happened to your civilization? Why did you send the signal?" One of the figures advanced, its form shifting like smoke. "We were once a great people, but we fell victim to a force beyond our understanding. It twists reality, consumes worlds, and leaves only shadows in its wake." Lars exchanged a worried glance with Dr. Chen. "What kind of force?" "It is the void," the figure replied, its voice growing colder. "It hungers for life, feeding on fear and despair. We sent the signal as a warning, but we are too late. It has returned." A sense of dread filled the chamber as Lars realized the gravity of the situation. "We need to leave. We can't let this force take hold again." The figures retreated, their forms blurring as they dissolved into the darkness. "You cannot escape what has already begun. Prepare yourselves, the void knows your presence." As the chamber returned to stillness, Lars felt the weight of the ancient warning settle over him. They had stumbled upon a terrifying truth, one that threatened not just their alliance, but all of existence. "Let's regroup with the others," Lars urged, urgency lacing his voice. "We need to formulate a plan and warn the coalition." As they retraced their steps, a sense of foreboding hung in the air. The shadows of the past loomed large, and the threat of the void was no longer just a distant legend. It was real, and it was coming for them. Upon returning to the surface, they found their crew members waiting anxiously. "What did you find?" Hayes asked, concern etched on his face. "We've uncovered a dire warning about the void," Lars replied, his voice heavy with the weight of their discovery. "It's not just a legend. We need to alert the coalition and prepare for what's coming." As they boarded the Elysium, Lars couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just facing an enemy, they were stepping into a storm that threatened to consume everything in its path. With a newfound determination, the crew set their course for the coalition headquarters, ready to unite against the encroaching darkness. The journey ahead would test their resolve and challenge their bonds, but they would face it together as guardians of the cosmos. The Elysium surged through the void of space, leaving the ancient ruins of the Eloria system behind. The crew was a flurry of activity, driven by the urgency of their discovery. Lars stood at the command console, scanning the stars, his mind racing with possibilities and dangers ahead. "Captain," Dr. Chen said, approaching him with a determined look, "we need to prepare the coalition for the impending threat of the void. The Zeltherans have a vast network of knowledge. They might know something about how to combat this." Lars nodded, his eyes narrowed. "Let's schedule a meeting as soon as we arrive. We need all the insights we can gather." As they traveled, the ship's atmosphere was thick with tension. Crew members exchanged concerned glances, and hushed whispers filled the corridors. Even the ever-enthusiastic Ensign Walker seemed subdued, his usual optimism tempered by the gravity of their findings. "Captain," Hayes called out, breaking through Lars's thoughts. "We've received a message from the Zeltherans. They want to convene immediately upon our arrival." "Good," Lars replied, his resolve strengthening. "Let's make sure everyone is ready to share what they know." The coalition headquarters was a bustling hub, a magnificent space station that orbited a shimmering blue planet. As they docked, the crew prepared for their first major council meeting with their allies. Lars felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He was no longer just leading a crew. He was now a leader among a coalition that spanned multiple civilizations. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was electric. Representatives from the Zeltherans, Thrixians, and Chirondians gathered, their diverse forms and cultures a tapestry of unity and strength. Lars took a deep breath, standing before the assembled representatives, each one a beacon of hope for their respective races. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Lars began, his voice steady but firm. "We've uncovered an urgent threat, the void. This ancient force has returned, and if we don't act quickly, it may consume us all." Murmurs of concern rippled through the room. The Zeltheran ambassador, a tall figure with light skin and deep-set eyes, leaned forward. "The void is a concept of fear and destruction. Our ancestors spoke of it in hushed tones. It is said to twist reality, feeding on despair." A Thrixian, short and stout with an intricate array of armor plating, crossed his arms. "We've encountered strange phenomena before, but never anything as malevolent as this. What are your plans for combating this threat?" "We need to pool our resources and knowledge," Dr. Chen interjected, her passion for the cause evident. "Together, we can discover a way to counteract the void's influence. We must understand what it wants and how it operates." "While that is true, it's equally important to ensure our forces are united in the face of this enemy," a Chirondian warrior spoke, his voice deep and rumbling. Trust must be built among our ranks if we are to stand against such darkness. Lars nodded in agreement. We can achieve both. Let's form smaller task forces to investigate the effects of the void and report back to this council. We can also work on enhancing our emotional resonance, which may be our greatest weapon against it. The discussion evolved, filled with ideas and strategies, but Lars could feel an underlying current of mistrust. He understood that forging alliances was fraught with challenges, especially when fear and uncertainty clouded judgment. As the meeting concluded, the representatives departed, and Lars felt a sense of unease settle over him. He knew they had to act quickly, but the coalition's fragile unity was already beginning to fray. In the days that followed, the crew of the Elysium worked tirelessly alongside their allies. Teams were formed, and research was conducted to decipher the nature of the void. Lars found himself drawn deeper into the emotional resonance that connected them all, an energy that could potentially amplify their strengths. One evening, while they were poring over data in the ship's main lab, Dr. Chen interrupted Lars's thoughts. I've been analyzing the historical records of the Zeltherans. There are references to artifacts that could amplify our emotional energy. If we can locate them, we might stand a chance against the void. Where are these artifacts? Lars asked, intrigued. They're rumored to be scattered across different systems, remnants of the ancient civilization that fell to the void. We'll need to divide our efforts to find them, Dr. Chen replied, her eyes alight with determination. Lars felt a surge of hope. Then let's get to work. We can't afford to lose any more time. The crew mobilized quickly, setting up expeditions to search for the artifacts. They identified 3 potential locations: a desolate asteroid belt known for its strange energy fluctuations, a forgotten temple on a distant world, and a mysterious nebula said to hold the remnants of a lost civilization. As the Elysium set course for the asteroid belt, Lars gathered his team to strategize. We'll need to be cautious. The energy fluctuations in that area may affect our instruments. If the void is lurking nearby, we could be walking into a trap. Hayes nodded, his expression serious. I'll assemble a security detail. We can't let our guard down, not with the stakes this high. As they entered the asteroid belt, the ship shuddered under the gravitational pull of the massive rocks, and the crew worked tirelessly to navigate through the chaos. The atmosphere on board was tense. Everyone felt the weight of what lay ahead. Approaching the designated coordinates, the pilot announced, glancing nervously at the view screen. Looks like we're not alone. Lars squinted at the screen, his heart racing. Another ship was visible, hovering among the asteroids, an imposing vessel marked with the insignia of the Thrixians. What are they doing here? Before he could finish his thought, a transmission crackled through. Elysium, this is Commander Thrax of the Thrixian fleet. We've detected unusual energy readings in this sector. We believe it may be connected to the void. Commander Thrax, Lars replied, keeping his tone even. We've received similar readings and are searching for artifacts that could help us combat it. Perhaps we can work together? Agreed. We'll deploy a shuttle to assist you, Commander Thrax replied. But be warned, the void's influence may be stronger than anticipated. As they coordinated their efforts, Lars felt a flicker of hope. They were not alone in this fight, and perhaps together they could unravel the mysteries surrounding the void. After what felt like hours of navigating through the treacherous asteroid field, the crew finally spotted a glowing object lodged between 2 massive rocks. It pulsated with energy, emitting a soft, blue light. There it is, Dr. Chen exclaimed, her excitement infectious. Lars nodded, focusing on the readings. Prepare to deploy the retrieval team, but let's remain vigilant. As they maneuvered the Elysium closer, the shuttle launched with a team led by Hayes, accompanied by a group of Thrixian soldiers. The tension was palpable as the shuttle approached the glowing artifact. Suddenly, a wave of energy washed over the area, warping the space around them. The void was here. Contact, Hayes shouted over the comms, urgency tinging his voice. We're under attack. The crew watched in horror as dark tendrils erupted from the shadows of the asteroids, reaching for the shuttle. The eerie whispers of the void echoed in their minds, filling them with dread. "Get the artifact. We can't let it fall into their hands," Lars commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. The Thrixian soldiers returned fire, their weapons blazing, but the shadows writhed and twisted, absorbing the blasts. The situation was dire. They needed to regroup. "Retreat!" Lars shouted, urgency fueling his voice. "We have to get the shuttle back to the Elysium." As the shuttle maneuvered through the asteroid field, the shadows pursued relentlessly, their dark forms flickering in and out of reality. "Hold on," Hayes called, gripping the controls with white knuckles. Just as it seemed they would be overtaken, the shuttle blasted away from the darkness and shot back toward the safety of the Elysium. The crew held their breath, hearts pounding as they narrowly escaped the clutches of the void. They docked, and Hayes stumbled out, panting. "We got the artifact, but it was a close call." Lars rushed over, his eyes scanning the glowing object in the shuttle's cargo hold. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As they gathered around, the artifact pulsed with energy, casting flickering shadows across their faces. They could feel the weight of its history and the possibilities it held for their fight against the void. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the artifact. "This may be the key to amplifying our emotional resonance. We need to study it further and understand how it works." Lars nodded, determination surging through him. "We can't waste any more time. The void won't wait for us to prepare." With the first artifact secured, the crew knew that the next steps in their journey would be filled with uncertainty and danger. But they were no longer alone. They had forged alliances, and together they would face the encroaching darkness that threatened to engulf them all. As the Elysium continued its journey toward the next location, the crew prepared themselves for the trials that lay ahead. The darkness of the void loomed ever closer, but they had hope, and that was a light worth fighting for. The Elysium soared through the vast expanse of space, its hull gleaming under the soft light of distant stars. In the heart of the ship, the crew was bustling with newfound energy, following their narrow escape from the clutches of the void. Yet, an unshakable tension hung in the air as they prepared for their next mission, retrieving another artifact that could potentially help them in their battle against the ancient darkness. Lars stood at the command console, studying the data they had collected from the first artifact. Its glow pulsed rhythmically, almost as if it were alive, resonating with the emotional energy of the crew surrounding it. He could feel its power, but it was an unpredictable force, one they had yet to fully understand. "Captain," Dr. Chen interrupted his thoughts, her expression serious. "The readings from the artifact indicate it has a unique resonance pattern. If we can harness its energy, we might amplify our emotional abilities significantly, but we'll need to be cautious." "Caution is key," Lars agreed, his brow furrowing. "But we can't let fear dictate our actions. We need to find the next artifact quickly before the void grows stronger." Hayes entered the room, a holographic display flickering to life in front of him. "We've pinpointed our next location. The temple on the planet Galdara is said to hold another artifact. It's known for its dense forest and ancient ruins, remnants of a civilization that once thrived there." "Galdara," Lars murmured, recalling the planet's reputation. "It's home to the Chironites, a race with a deep connection to nature. We might find allies there, but we should be prepared for the unexpected. There's no telling what the void may have left in its wake." "Understood," Hayes replied, determination evident in his eyes. "I'll gather the team for our descent." As they approached Galdara, the lush greens of the planet's surface unfolded before them, a vibrant contrast to the cold void of space. The Elysium descended through the atmosphere, the sounds of the engines humming harmoniously with the calls of distant creatures. Lars could feel a connection to the planet, its life energy intertwining with the ship's systems. Once they landed, the crew disembarked, stepping onto the soft, moss-covered ground. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flora. Ancient trees towered above them, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. Dr. Chen adjusted her equipment, scanning the area for any signs of the artifact. The temple should be nearby. If the legends hold true, we should find inscriptions that describe its significance. The group made their way through the dense underbrush, guided by the faint energy readings coming from the artifact. Lars led the way, his senses heightened, aware that danger could lurk around any corner. The whispers of the void were never far behind, echoing in his mind. As they approached the temple, its stone structure emerged from the foliage, covered in vines and moss. The architecture was intricate, with carvings that depicted ancient Chironite warriors battling monstrous creatures. Lars felt a pang of nostalgia. These were tales of bravery and sacrifice. "Look at these carvings," Dr. Chen said, tracing her fingers over the stone. "They speak of a great struggle against darkness. It seems the Chironites have faced a similar threat." Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the tranquil atmosphere. Lars raised his hand, signaling for the teen to stop. The group fell silent, ears straining to catch any movement. The rustling intensified, and from the shadows emerged a group of Chironite guardians, their bodies clad in armor made of woven vines and natural materials. "State your purpose, strangers," the leader spoke, his voice resonating like the rustle of leaves. "You trespass on sacred ground." Lars stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We seek the artifact that resides within this temple. Our mission is to combat a darkness that threatens all life. We wish to form an alliance with the Chironites." The leader studied them carefully, his piercing green eyes scanning each member of the crew. "Many have come seeking power, but few understand the cost. The artifact you seek is tied to our history. It demands respect and sacrifice." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "We understand the weight of history, and we're willing to honor it. The void is returning, and we cannot face it alone. We ask for your guidance." After a tense moment, the leader nodded slowly. "Very well. We shall accompany you into the temple, but know this: if the artifact chooses you, you will bear the burden of its power." The Chironite guardians led the way, their movements fluid and graceful as they navigated through the temple's entrance. The air inside was thick with ancient magic, and the faint glow of biolite fungi lit the stone walls. The carvings here told a story of struggle, of a civilization that had fought against the darkness long before the crew's time. As they ventured deeper, the pulse of energy from the artifact grew stronger. The guardians moved with purpose, their expressions a mix of reverence and caution. Lars could feel the energy weaving through the air, wrapping around him like a warm embrace. He glanced at Dr. Chen, who was equally entranced. "It's beautiful," she whispered, almost to herself. The group finally entered a vast chamber, the walls adorned with intricate mosaics that depicted the Chironites in harmony with nature. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which the artifact rested, a crystalline orb radiating brilliant light. "Here it is," the leader said, stepping forward. "But be warned, the artifact will test your resolve. Only those pure of heart may wield its power." Lars stepped closer, feeling an overwhelming pull toward the orb. As he reached out to touch it, a rush of energy surged through him. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of the Chironites' past battles, their sacrifices, and the horrors of the void consuming their world. Suddenly, darkness encroached around the edges of his vision, whispers clawing at his mind. He stumbled back, heart racing. "No, get it away from me!" Dr. Chen rushed to his side, concern etched across her face. "Lars, focus. You can withstand this." The whispers grew louder, threatening to consume him. "You are unworthy. You will fail." Lars clenched his fists, drawing on the bonds he had forged with his crew and allies. "No, I will not succumb to fear." The whispers faltered, the darkness receding as he found strength within himself. He focused on the light emanating from the orb, channeling the energy through his body. With a sudden clarity, he understood. The artifact wasn't a weapon. It was a beacon of hope, a manifestation of their collective will to fight against despair. He reached out again, this time with purpose, feeling the warmth of the artifact envelop him. The orb pulsated in response, releasing a wave of light that washed over the chamber. The walls shimmered, and the guardians stood in awe, their eyes wide with wonder. "You are worthy," the leader proclaimed, his voice echoing in the vastness of the chamber. "The artifact has chosen you." As Lars withdrew his hand, he felt different, stronger. The energy of the artifact thrummed within him, a connection to the Chironite heritage and the hope of their people. He turned to his crew, their expressions a mix of pride and relief. "We have it," Lars said, his voice steady. "But we need to protect it. The Void will not take this from us." The Chironite leader stepped forward, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. "You have proven your worth, but your journey is only beginning. The Void will not rest until it consumes what it seeks. We shall lend our strength to your cause." The crew shared a moment of camaraderie, understanding the significance of their alliance. Together, they could forge a path through the darkness. As they exited the temple, Lars felt a sense of purpose igniting within him. With the artifact in their possession and new allies by their side, they stood a chance against the encroaching Void. But lurking in the shadows, the threat of the Void still loomed, ready to strike when they least expected it. The crew boarded the Elysium, and as the ship ascended into the sky, Lars couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The whispers of the Void echoed in the back of his mind, a chilling reminder that their struggle was far from over. The Elysium soared through the skies of Galdara, its newly acquired artifact pulsing with a vibrant light that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the ship. The crew had successfully forged an alliance with the Chironites, but the weight of the Void loomed heavily in their minds, a specter that refused to be ignored. Lars stood at the command console, deep in thought. The artifact was more than just a source of power. It was a bridge to the past, a reminder of the sacrifices made by the Chironites in their battles against the Void. He felt a profound connection to it, and with that connection came a burden, a responsibility to honor the legacy of those who had come before him. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Hayes announced, breaking the silence in the command deck. The tone of his voice was tense, and Lars turned sharply to face him. "Put it through." A holographic image flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Commander Vren, the leader of the Coalition fleet. His expression was grave, the lines on his face deepening as he spoke. "Lars, we have a situation. The Void is escalating its activities near the Outer Rim. We need you and your crew to investigate. It appears they're searching for something." "Searching for something?" Lars echoed, a sense of foreboding settling over him. "What do you mean?" "We believe they're after the artifacts, particularly the one you just obtained from Galdara. They want to harness that power for their own ends. You must keep it safe at all costs." The gravity of Vren's words struck Lars hard. The Void was not just an existential threat, it was actively hunting them down. "We'll head to the Outer Rim immediately," he replied, determination coursing through him. "We can't let them get their hands on the artifact." As the transmission ended, Lars turned to his crew. "Prepare for departure. We'll need to be on high alert. If the Void is searching for us, we can expect trouble." The crew sprang into action, checking their weapons and ensuring the ship was combat-ready. Dr. Chen joined Lars at the command console, her brow furrowed in thought. If they're looking for the artifact, it's possible they've already found other artifacts. They might have gained power that could rival ours. "Then we'll have to outmaneuver them," Lars replied, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. "We've faced worse odds. We can't allow fear to cloud our judgment. We'll stay one step ahead of them." As the Elysium navigated through the stars toward the Outer Rim, the crew remained vigilant. The beauty of space was marred by the knowledge that danger lurked just beyond their sight. Lars couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a prickling awareness that something was amiss. Within the hour, they arrived at the Outer Rim, a chaotic region of space where the fabric of reality seemed thinner. Stars flickered uneasily, and shadows stretched across the void. The atmosphere was tense, charged with an energy that felt alive. "Captain, we're detecting multiple ships on our scanners," Hayes reported, his fingers flying over the controls. They're not coalition vessels. Lars' heart raced. What kind of ships? Unknown design, but they matched the descriptions of void ships reported in previous encounters. They're closing in fast. Brace for impact, Lars shouted, adrenaline surging through him. The crew scrambled to their positions, weapons drawn and ready. The first ship burst from the shadows, its sleek form glinting with an ominous light. It was followed by more, a swarm of void vessels emerging from the darkness like predators stalking their prey. Lars could feel the air thickening with malevolence, the presence of the void suffocating. "Target their engines," Lars commanded. "We can't let them surround us." The Elysium responded with a barrage of fire. Brilliant blasts light the void as they struck the nearest void ship. Explosions rippled through the darkness, but the enemy was relentless, swarming toward them with terrifying speed. "More ships incoming from behind," Hayes shouted. "They're trying to flank us." Lars gritted his teeth, his mind racing. "Dr. Chen, can you amplify the artifact's power to boost our shields?" "Working on it," she replied, fingers dancing over her console. "It may take a moment to sync with the ship's systems." "Make it fast," Lars called out, guiding the ship into evasive maneuvers. He could feel the pressure of the void bearing down on them, a dark tide threatening to engulf everything. As the Elysium twisted and turned, Lars caught a glimpse of a familiar shape among the chaos, a Chironite vessel, sleek and agile, darting between the void ships with ease. The Chironite guardians had come to aid them. "Commander, we have reinforcements," he shouted, relief washing over him. The Chironite ship joined the fray, its crew expertly targeting void vessels, creating openings for the Elysium to exploit. With renewed determination, Lars pushed forward, focusing on the nearest enemy ship. "Now, Dr. Chen," he ordered. With a surge of energy, the artifact's power surged through the Elysium. The shields glowed brightly, and Lars felt a rush of strength as the ship responded to the enhanced energy. Their weapons fired with increased potency, and he watched as enemy ships erupted in bursts of fire. "Keep the pressure on," Lars shouted, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "We can turn the tide." The battle raged on, each moment filled with chaos and uncertainty. The void ships fought with a relentless ferocity, but the combined strength of the Elysium and the Chironite vessel began to shift the balance. They pressed forward, targeting the largest void ship at the center of the swarm. "This is it," Lars shouted. "Focus all fire on that ship." The crew rallied, their determination igniting a fire within them. They unleashed a torrent of energy toward the central ship, the combined power of their attacks creating a blinding light that lit the darkness. For a moment, it felt as if time stood still, the universe holding its breath as the energy collided with the void ship. The impact sent shockwaves through space, and the ship shuddered before erupting into a brilliant explosion, scattering debris across the void. A cheer erupted from the crew, but Lars remained focused. "Stay alert, there are more ships out there." Just as he finished speaking, a new threat emerged, a massive void warship, larger and more formidable than anything they had faced before. Its presence cast a shadow over the battlefield, a chilling reminder of the void's relentless hunger. "Captain, we're outmatched," Hayes shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "That ship dwarfs us." Lars felt his heart race, but he knew they couldn't back down. "We've come this far. We have to fight." As the warship advanced, tendrils of darkness lashed out, targeting the Elysium. Lars maneuvered the ship with precision, but the void's attacks were unrelenting. "Dr. Chen, we need that artifact's power," Lars urged, his voice tense. "Now." She nodded, her fingers flying across the console. "I'm channeling everything I can, but it's unstable. We need to be careful." Lars gritted his teeth, determination flooding through him. "We'll make it work. We can't let the void take us." With a final surge of energy, the artifact pulsed brightly, and Lars felt a wave of strength wash over him. The Elysium glowed with an otherworldly light, its systems responding with newfound vigor. "Let's finish this," Lars shouted, guiding the ship toward the warship. The crew rallied behind him, their spirits ignited by the prospect of victory. As they approached the colossal void warship, Lars felt a surge of fear mingling with hope. They were outnumbered, but they were not alone. The bond forged with the Chironites and the power of the artifacts strengthened their resolve. With a final, desperate charge, the Elysium unleashed its fury upon the warship. The energy rippled through space, light the darkness as their combined might clashed against the void's insatiable hunger. In that moment, Lars knew they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future. They were guardians of hope in a universe threatened by despair. The Elysium surged forward, its hull glowing with the energy of the artifact. The colossal void warship loomed ahead, a monstrous shadow in the void of space. Lars could feel the tension in the air, a palpable energy that thrummed with both fear and determination. "Hold steady," he shouted, gripping the controls tightly. The crew was primed for battle, their faces set with grim resolve. "This is our moment." Dr. Chen was at her console, her eyes focused and intense. "I'm ready to amplify the artifact's energy one last time. We need to hit them hard and fast." "Do it," Lars commanded, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The ship shuddered as the artifact's energy surged through their systems, wrapping the Elysium in a vibrant cocoon of light. They could feel it in electric anticipation that united them as one. The crew focused their weapons on the warship, the targeting systems locking onto its core. The air was thick with tension as they prepared for the final assault. Lars glanced at the holographic display, the enemy warship's shields flickering but still formidable. "Prepare to fire on my mark," Lars barked. Just then, the void warship retaliated, dark tendrils of energy shooting forth, targeting the Elysium with deadly intent. The ship shook violently as the first impact struck, sending crew members sprawling. "Status report," Lars shouted, quickly regaining his footing. "Shields holding at 70%, Hayes replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. "But they won't last long." "Captain, we need to strike now," Dr. Chen urged, her fingers dancing across the console. "The artifact's energy is stabilizing, but we only have a few moments." "Now," Lars yelled, his heart racing. The crew unleashed a torrent of energy from their weapons, brilliant beams of light cutting through the darkness. The blast collided with the void warship, striking its shields and sending shockwaves through the void. But the warship was not finished. It responded with ferocity, returning fire with a relentless barrage of dark energy. Lars navigated the ship with precision, evading the onslaught as he guided them closer to the enemy. "Keep firing. We need to penetrate their shields," he shouted, determination etched across his face. The beams from the Elysium struck true, tearing through the void and hitting the warship's energy core. For a moment, it seemed as if they had breached the defenses. The void ship shuddered, dark energy pulsating as the damage registered. "Direct hit," Hayes cheered, his voice rising above the chaos. "Again, focus fire," Lars shouted, adrenaline surging. "We can't let up now." The Elysium continued to unleash its fury, but the void warship began to recover. Its shields flickered but recharged rapidly, dark energy enveloping it like a protective cocoon. "They're regenerating too quickly," Dr. Chen exclaimed, frustration evident in her voice. "We need a more concentrated attack." In that moment, Lars recalled the power of their alliance with the Chironites. "Hayes, can you establish a channel with the Chironite vessel?" "Already on it," Hayes replied, quickly tapping at his console. "Chironites, this is Captain Lars of the Elysium. We need your help. Coordinate with us for a combined strike." "Understood, Captain," came the voice of Commander Terk from the Chironite ship, their holographic image flickering into view. "We'll flank them from the left. On your mark." Lars felt a surge of hope. "Let's do this together. On my signal 3, 2, 1, now." The two ships launched a coordinated attack. The Elysium veered to the right, and the Chironite vessel moved to the left, catching the void warship in a crossfire. Brilliant beams of energy erupted from both ships, colliding with the warship's core in a cascade of light and sound. The impact was cataclysmic. The Void warship erupted in a stunning explosion, light and dark colliding in a cosmic ballet. Lars shielded his eyes, heart racing as the shockwave hit, sending the Elysium rocking. "Status report," he yelled, adrenaline surging. "We've lost contact with the Chironite vessel," Hayes shouted, panic creeping into his voice. They were caught in the explosion. Lars felt a cold grip of fear in his chest. "No, Commander Terk and his crew can't be lost. We have to find them." "Captain, look!" Dr. Chen pointed to the view screen. From the remnants of the Void warship, small escape pods were launching into the void, drifting away from the destruction. "There," Lars said, relief washing over him. "They're evacuating. We need to assist them." The Elysium glided toward the escape pods, maneuvering carefully through the debris. Lars activated the ship's communication systems. "Chironite ships, this is Lars. We're here to assist. What's your status?" A crackled response came through, tinged with urgency. "Captain, we're intact but need immediate extraction. The Void will be back. Our engines are compromised." "Hang tight. We're on our way," Lars replied, guiding the Elysium closer to the escape pods. He could see the Chironite crew members, their faces etched with exhaustion but relieved to see the Elysium. "Prepare to board," he called out as they drew near. The crew activated the ship's grappling hooks, reaching out to secure the pods and pull them aboard. One by one, the Chironites were brought aboard the Elysium. Commander Terk stepped onto the ship, his expression weary but resolute. "Captain Lars, I owe you my life. Thank you for coming for us." "Just doing what we had to do," Lars replied, clapping Terk on the shoulder. "But we need to regroup. The Void is still out there." As the last of the Chironite crew boarded, a tremor shook the Elysium. Lars' heart sank as he turned to the view screen. A massive wave of dark energy was forming in the distance, the unmistakable sign of the Void's resurgence. "The Void is regrouping. They're not finished with us yet," Hayes shouted. "Then let's not give them a chance," Lars replied, adrenaline flooding his system. "Prepare the ship. We're heading to the nearest coalition base for reinforcements." As the crew scrambled to prepare the Elysium for departure, Lars took a moment to breathe. They had faced unimaginable odds, and yet they had triumphed against the Void. The weight of leadership pressed on him, but he felt a renewed sense of hope. The crew of the Elysium was not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for a future where the Void could never threaten them again. They were guardians of hope in a universe filled with darkness. As the ship propelled forward, Lars looked at his crew, their determination, their resilience, and their bond forged through adversity. They would face whatever came next together, united against the darkness. "Let's show the Void what humanity and our allies can do," Lars declared, his voice steady and strong. "This fight isn't over yet." With renewed vigor, the Elysium raced toward the horizon, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to protect the cosmos from the encroaching shadows. And in that moment, as they soared through the stars, hope flickered bright against the darkness, a promise of a new dawn.